Good morning. It's a warm one. It's going to be a warm one today, getting up to 70 degrees. You'll really enjoy it today, but we have a lot of other things going on, as you know. Once again, welcome to Radio Westchester. It is 49 degrees under scattered clouds right now. It is March 9th, 2020. Welcome to Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am Bob Marrone. This is Radio Westchester, your radio station at the train station. It is 6:33. Lots of sunshine and breezy. Temperature 67 to 70 degrees today. The wind out of the southwest 10 to 15. We'll be back with the full weather in just a moment. So much going on today. We're going to cover with you the coronavirus and what schools are closed. New Rochelle is the epicenter of the coronavirus in New York State, so says the mayor. Again, we'll have the list of schools. We'll tell you the symptoms to look out for, how many people are affected, and of course, what the governor had to say yesterday. In New York State, we've got 89 cases, most of them right here in New Rochelle. Welcome to the program. We have much going on. And of course, the Knicks and Nets won yesterday, but the Nets fired their coach the night before. Nobody really knows why. Well, let's go to the weather, and the weather's brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. 49 scattered clouds, as we said, lots of sunshine and breezy today. The temperature getting near 70. Tonight, partly cloudy, the temperature 45 degrees. Tuesday, pardon me, cloudy with rain late in the day. The temperature will be up to 62. Another nice day. Wednesday, partly sunny, cold, 55 degrees. The overnight low will be 40. And as we said, the weather brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. In the news this morning, supported by Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Payne & Kahn, Dominic's Fine Cigars, and plug-in virtual reality. Well, things opened up yesterday, and we'll go back as far as yesterday to explain where things are. Governor Cuomo declared a state of emergency. Actually, he did so Saturday on the New York's coronavirus numbers. Now, as the numbers continue to tick upward, with 89 cases now reported, including nearly 60 right here linked to New Rochelle residents at the center of the outbreak. The number of New York City cases increased overnight to 11 from 4 the previous day. So as he said, we have a situation in New Rochelle. This is the governor. The governor said it's his daily update on the virus. You're seeing those numbers in New Rochelle expand, as you have seen in other clusters. 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4, and so forth. At least 10 of the 89 patients identified in the last week required hospitalization. And as you know, the New Rochelle virus carrier, who works as an attorney in Manhattan, attended services at Young Israel of New Rochelle back in February 21st. He also had been to a conservative assembly earlier that also seems to have contributed to his issues. And the governor was also upset over the weekend, and said so because the federal government, it was bureaucratic, but not political, we don't think, but nonetheless, the federal government had been slow to approve the use of an automated system out on Long Island for testing that is state-of-the-art and allows for thousands to be tested each day. But also was something that the governor went on to do, very similar to the president. Maybe he went about it differently, but their message is the same. He says, I'm not urging calm, but I'm urging reality. I'm urging a factual response as opposed to an emotional one. And the point he made, if you will, was that if you get it, it's probably not going to be terribly harmful to you, unless you are in the aging group where you are over 70 or so but have a compromised immune system or some other problem. The virus is not only not likely to kill you, but not likely even to put you into the hospital. In a moment, we will get to the school closings that are a result of the virus, but also we did want to share with you what the governor, or rather Mayor Bramson, had to say this weekend, yesterday. And he said, and this out of News 12, he welcomes an emergency operations center that has been proposed from the state to set up locally. New Rochelle, unfortunately, he said, is the epicenter of the coronavirus in New York State, so it makes sense to make the staging area here. Now, the state of emergency declared over the virus this weekend by Governor Cuomo should make it easier to get cleaning supplies and hand sanitizer. And I'm proud to say we have our hand sanitizer and our Lysol and ammonia here at the radio station, too, so that visitors can feel secure. And as you know, we are right here at the radio station as we come up on 642. And it is time to take a look at the list of schools that will be closed today. Excuse me. Scarsdale Public Schools will be closed through March 18th after a middle school faculty member tested positive for coronavirus. And they said, and I quote, "We have, that is the school representatives, we have spoken with the Westchester County Health Commissioner, and she recommended that we close our schools." Again, a faculty member there as the cause. In Somer Central School District will be closed on Monday. That's today, after a parent of a Primrose Elementary student tested positive for the virus. This according to School Superintendent Raymond H. Blanche. And the maintenance staff will deep clean all four school buildings. In East Ramapo, the Central School District there will be closed today and tomorrow. 5 students have been quarantined for exposure there, according to School Superintendent Deborah Wortham. None of the children, though, are showing any actual symptoms. And the students attend Hempstead Elementary School, Pomona, Chestnut Ridge, and Spring Valley schools. The Westchester Torah Academy, the private Jewish day school in White Plains, is closed until March 16th. Rabbi Avi Hoffman, or Avi, that's with a V, Avi Hoffman, said the school is following directions from the department. The Westchester Day School, the private Westchester Day School in Mamaroneck, will be closed until March 17 after a student tested positive for the virus. And some schools are going to close for the remainder of the school year. The private Keough Academy of New York and Purchase is closing for the remainder of the year over coronavirus concerns. I finally did get that one out. Also, the Annunciation School in Yonkers, pardon me, it is closed due to coronavirus outbreaks. Hundreds of students are staying home. The Annunciation School is the latest to shut down. A letter was sent home to parents informing them that the student at the school was in close proximity to a person who has a case of coronavirus. According to the letter, both the person who tested positive for COVID-19 and the student are not showing any symptoms so far. And once again, to give you some of these totals, Governor Andrew Cuomo said at a news conference the number in New York increased to a statewide number of 105, here closer to Westchester. Now, some schools have actually reopened, according to a story of News 12. That's because of all the work done this weekend. Many schools were shut down to disinfect. We disinfected here yesterday. The schools that will reopen include the Mount Vernon School District after a mother of 2 students may have had direct contact with the New Rochelle attorney who was the first coronavirus patient in Westchester. The Hastings-on-Hudson School District has also reopened after exposure concerns there. And John F. Kennedy Elementary School in Portchester, which closed early Friday after a family member of 2 students was believed to have been in close contact with someone else. And also Primrose Elementary School in Yonkers will reopen Tuesday. Again, most schools this weekend made a banner effort to contaminate to the extent that they could, to sanitize their places. Now, firefighters have been pulled back from virus calls on the FDNY. Not here so far in New Rochelle. The department order issued Friday says 9/11 calls for asthma attacks, fever, coughs, and difficult breathing will be handled by EMT. The fire department used to handle some of them, but because there are so many that come out, they don't want those individuals taken off the trucks for fear of fire concerns, and also generally the large group of men that could be exposed to the virus. Now, what's interesting, you may also have difficulty finding a new iPhone 11. New Yorkers on the hunt for that new phone may have trouble scoring. Wireless retailers around the city have either run out of stock or are running low on iPhone 11 and iPhone 11 Pro, as carriers stockpile them at nearby warehouses. This according to store employees, and that's they're stockpiling them. Many are not. Many factories in Asia are not producing them right now. By the way, Italy, 1/3 of the country is already in quarantine as we come up now on 6/47. A little more about the coronavirus before we move on to some other things. As the cases of the coronavirus surged in Italy, Iran, South Korea, the U.S., and elsewhere, many scientists say it's plain that the world is in the grips of a pandemic, a serious global outbreak. But the World Health Organization has resisted describing the crisis as such, saying the word pandemic might spook the world further and lead some countries to lose hope of containing the virus. The health agency, the UN Health Agency, has previously described the pandemic as a situation in which a new virus is causing sustained community-level outbreaks in at least 2 world regions. Many experts say that the threshold has long been met. But it is what it is, folks. It's like when you break your arm when you're a kid. My arm is broken. Well, yeah, it's broken if you had that accident. The fact that that's what we called it, a broken arm, is no more or no less than the symptoms you're dealing with and the treatment that you will have to endure as we pass through 6/48. Now, that's what's going. A couple of other things about the coronavirus that you should be aware of. For those of you who are investors, the stock market is down the 5% limit prior to the opening. Those are called futures. And another ripple that is causing serious concern worldwide this morning is that oil prices are down 20%. We had already been in the grip of a trade war between Saudi Arabia and Russia, and there is no agreement. So now Saudi Arabia is pumping out a lot of oil to get in a price war with them and lower the price. We will benefit in that way as individual drivers, because certainly the price of gasoline and fuel oil is going to drop precipitously over the next few days. However, and of course exacerbated by the crisis, so the economy has got a double whammy now. The crisis of the virus and the crisis of a trade war between 2 major oil producers, Russia, and of course, Saudi Arabia. And it is time for us to take another look at the weather and talk about some sponsors. And then when we come back, we'll talk about regional news. We also have some more primaries coming up this week. And our monologue today will focus, believe it or not, on the contrast between not promoting or not allowing a Woody Allen's book to be published and some of the things that President Trump does. There's very little difference. And in some cases, maybe the Woody Allen thing is worse. When we come back, let's take a look at the weather. Right now, it's 49 degrees under scattered clouds, lots of sunshine and breezy. The temperature will be 67. The wind out of the southwest at 10 to 15 miles an hour. Imagine that, 67's official, but it will get up to 70. It's always 3 or 4 degrees more than we report. Tonight, partly cloudy. The temperature will be 45 degrees. The wind out of the southwest, 5 to 10. Tuesday, cloudy with rain late in the day. The temperature 62. The wind out of the southwest, 10 to 20. Wednesday, partly sunny. The high will be 55. This is May weather. And it sounds like a boxer, right? This is May weather, folks, and it's really nice to have. And we haven't had weather this warm since 2016 on this day, and that was high. It got up to 77. But remember, we still have a month left of almost a month of the Ides of March and early April, where you still, believe it or not, could have, snow, like a blizzard. All righty. The weather was brought to you exclusively by our friends at United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. And as we get towards the top of the hour, Aging Issues Management supported us this morning, so to the law firm of Pena & Con, Dominic's Fine Cigars, and plug-in virtualreality.com. 6:51. Welcome on this. It's going to be a beautiful day in the neighborhood, even if you're worried about the coronavirus. So sit tight. We have all the information that you will need. This is Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am he, and you are listening through all of the various broadcast mechanisms of Radio Westchester, your radio station at the train station. And just for those of you who may be listening on one are going to get in the car, if you're listening on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Periscope, or any of the video slash audio outlets, you can switch, go to MyTuner Radio, download Mornings with Bob Marrone, or click on just that icon, or click on or search for RadioWestchester.com. Then you can Bluetooth it in the car to your heart's content. Now, if you go on the website, RadioWestchester.com, all the different ways you can listen and watch are there. So please, welcome to the program. And boy, do we have stuff to talk about today. Do I want to do my sports first? Do I want to be angry? Alrighty, and we're not doing our monologue yet. We'll do that towards the end because it's something that really troubled me. How many of you saw, and I'm sure you did, you either saw the video of it, you saw the pictures of it in the paper. I don't know what we're feeding our young kids. I don't know what's in their minds. But this was in many newspapers, and a lot of my friends to the left would prefer I didn't do this story. But a mob of teenagers punched, kicked, and stomped a 15-year-old girl in broad daylight on a Brooklyn street. They took the Air Jordans off her feet. They stole her telephone. And a gang, a whole mob of kids. And they looked well-dressed. They didn't seem like scruffy kids or whatever. The girl was walking on Utica Avenue near Sterling Place in Crown Heights on Thursday when more than a dozen teens pounced on her in apparent revenge for a fight. But as it turns out, yes, she did have some scuffle with someone. She's a quiet, nice kid. But to add final insult to injury, after they beat her up, they kicked her in the head, they kicked her body, they joined in, and most of them didn't even know who she was. The girl was recovering at her grandmother's home on Friday. She went into the hospital, got checked out. She's going to be okay. But we got to take a good, hard look. You know, don't let Carranza near them who want to give them awards for not having killed her. Folks, you can keep hoping that this move in education, and this is coming from a guy who's been a liberal all his life for the most part, that this avoidance of reality, this belief that you don't need to discipline people that is governing the way they run the schools in New York City, and that threatens your schools here in Westchester, particularly New Rochelle, which we cover. Don't allow it to happen here, okay? Just don't. All righty, here's another one now on the other side of the fence. I got something for everybody. You know, I took a shot at liberals. Now let me take a shot at liberals. Let me take another shot at them. A battle is smoldering. You can't make this up in Albany about banning menthol cigarettes and menthol-flavored vaping. And the essence of it is, and even it's, you know, I have to agree with Al Sharpton on this one. They're saying that they have to stop marketing it because they're cool and they taste good and they're mostly marketed to the black neighborhood, and ergo, they should not be allowed to be there. Now, quite frankly, there are many who believe that cigarettes shouldn't be marketed at all. You want to say that? Fine. But then again, once you do, well, first of all, doing it on race is absolutely absurd because marketers do demographics. Now, the thing about making money, life and death, and there's no political correctness to it, okay? You don't create the safety mechanisms on an airplane over color or race or any of it. You do what you have to do because people will die. When it comes to making money in this country, they will market to whomever will buy it. Now, is it wrong to market supplies to women like apricot shampoo and cocoa butter shampoo because they buy it more than men and maybe they'll get cancer from it? I don't know. I'm not saying they will. Well, no. They market to who buys it. It is, okay, apolitical, asexual, aracial, asexual identity. They don't care. It's about making money. Now, here's the thing that it was really interesting that even Al Sharpton said, he said, critics like Reverend Al Sharpton initially argued the proposal could lead to more black New Yorkers being targeted and harassed by cops if they have. What are we going to have? Menthol cigarettes? Cops arrest you for smoking a menthol cigarette? This is absurd, and quite frankly, we're going to go beyond racism here. It's racial paranoia. Because, not for nothing, I smoked for 10 years, 3 packs a day, and I loved menthol cigarettes. We can't take rights away without treating it equally across the board. Now, what I would say, because if they're popular in the black community, all kinds of things are popular in different communities. I got news for you. Coffee makes people nervous. Well, cappuccino is very popular in the Italian neighborhoods. Guacamole is popular in the Mexican neighborhoods. What, are we going to ban anything because we feel like we are an injured segment of society? This is getting absurd now. Now, if you want to put together a group that goes after marketing people among the lowest of the low, but necessary in a commodity environment and an economic environment, to say, get the sugar out of our cereal, get the trans fats out of our baked goods. Maybe we should stop selling, although I love them, like everyone, donuts because they kill people. It takes like 12 I guess it's, 12 potatoes to equal the calories in one donut or something like that. What I'm saying is we got an awful lot more to worry about. We have gambling legal now. So I got to tell you, gambling, I bet you most gambling addicts are white males. Well, the left will probably say, that's good. We need to kill more of those. Anyway, it's nonsense. It's silly. We have to stop that. Now, before we get to sports, my monologue, and then we will talk about sports and a few other odds and end issues. 2 things happened recently that have me troubled. And it's time to throw the right under the bus, throw the president under the bus. This has to do with free speech. It has to do with our system of checks, balances in the fourth estate. I'm doing the lesser crime first, although maybe coming from a president it is, but at least he's going through the courts. The president is suing CNN, the New York Times, the Washington Post, because of their assertions and the language in which they approached the muddling by the Russians in the campaign. This is all part of the 2016 campaign. The president shouldn't be doing that, going after free press. But give him his due. At least he's going through the courts. Now, this is going to anger some people. But then why do this if we were going to, put sugar on a bitter pill? This is a bitter pill. Now, I'm one of those people, and it hasn't affected my decision, but this is about Woody Allen. And I'm not one of them. I believe him that he didn't touch his daughter. And anyone who's ever been divorced or been in a divorce situation or been a lawyer knows exactly what I'm talking about. Now, what he did was low down, dirty deal, marrying what amounted to his stepdaughter, but he did. His wife at the time, was adopting lots of different, from the goodness of her heart or whatever, people and children. Madonna does it. Angela Jolie does it. If you see a thread there, I'll let you do that. Like a judge says to the jury, if common sense tells you something, infer it. At any rate, during a charge to the jury. Here's what bothers me about this. Now, this guy, Dylan Farrow, has done great work. And he almost can take not personal responsibility, but a great deal of good credit for starting the Me Too movement. Good for you. Epstein's on his way down. We saw the great comedian go down 2 years ago, a year and a half ago now, whatever it was. And the world out there of powerful people abusing others, not just women, but mostly women, and women for sexual favors, and abusing them and making them second-class citizens, including religion, the services previously, and every other institution in society. That is a great thing. The Me Too movement essentially is a great thing. Because anyone who's ever been in a lousy job that saw the boss fooling around with his secretary, or saw the injustice that takes place in the workplace, or even in this business, if you cross the wrong person, you got to worry about whether the guy down the block or someone else who owns a radio station or a TV station is going to call up all his buddies and screw you. I get it. Weinstein's got to go. But under no circumstances should people on the left, and these are the kinds of people on the left I support, who care about free speech, who care about talking back to power, should they be involved in the process of banning a book. And that is what Dylan did. Now, this is an even-handed thing that I'm going through, because I understand the Me Too movement needed to happen, and it's a wonderful thing. But just because you're angry, just because you want revenge, if you love this country, you don't go about banning books. Even the president, who most of my friends on the left would eviscerate for suing the Times. Now, the president probably even knows that those lawsuits are going to go nowhere because of the standard for malicious intent, because there needed to be absolute proof that there was no smoke there. Even the president knows those lawsuits are going to go nowhere, but at least he used the law. But for Dylan, for this young man who is brilliant, Dylan Farrow, to say, you won't print my book, you can't sell my book if you print my father's book and distribute it. He is doing, and this is the great irony here. He is doing exactly what the Me Too movement and other movements on the left are righteously doing to get power out of our system, to keep things from being rigged, so that someone like me or anyone else who does this kind of work and speaks their mind will not be shut down by someone more powerful or with more money. And what does Dylan do? He does the very thing. He does the very thing that the Me Too movement exists to stop. And so you will yell and scream and get in the streets and say, don't vote for Donald Trump, when you're doing the same things. And look, I live with it. I'm in this business. And I'll tell you a little bit about just this business and the TV business and the paid six business and the Rich Johnson business and all of that. Half of these people don't even know and like each other. They go to each other's book signings. They endorse their movies. They endorse their books. They endorse their networks. They endorse their radio stations. And they simply all go viral, but they do it the old-fashioned way. They call up Rich Johnson, or they call up these gossip columns to get their names in the newspaper. Many of them do what Donald Trump's accused to have done. They create a fake name even for themselves and make a story for themselves. I'm an important guy. I tell this important guy this story. Yeah, this is what I do. Yeah, I am the icon of whatever. And they run with it, because when that guy calls them, they will do the same thing for him. So let me put a bow on this. I was so, I've been saying on these microphones for years, and for the last 3 years, that I'm brokenhearted at what's gone on in Washington, and I am. Because even if I like some things that Donald Trump is doing, I don't like the way he goes about doing it. We have things in this country that are sacred, and they are no longer sacred. But now, the people who ought to be his chief critics have done something that if it doesn't trouble you, because, yeah, it's right. No, it's not right. Woody Allen has a right to publish a book. Now, does the publisher have a right not to publish it because they're afraid of losing money? Absolutely. But the instigator was a man who apparently his raison d'etre is to speak truth to power and stop these kinds of things. You go and ban a book? Think about that. Just a little bit. I'll be back with sports. A little music soothes the soul. It is 7:07, just like the airplane. You're listening to Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am he. Of course, the big topic today, and we're all getting tired of it, is the coronavirus, but it is out there. Now, one of the things that you got to agree with Governor Cuomo and President Trump on this one. Yeah, none of us wants to get the virus. None of us wants to get the flu. But because the biggest issue about this is that it is new and it is unknown, but thus far, just to put you at ease a little bit, it is no less fatal than the flu. In fact, it's a little more fatal percentage-wise, but in terms of the way it works through society, and it will eventually, some will get it, some won't. Most who get it will hardly have any symptoms. Others will have moderate symptoms. Some will have severe symptoms, and some will get sick and die. But to send the whole economy into the drain or politicize it, I mean, look, the president says stupid things. We all know that. Even the people that support him know that. Try and look at what's really going on and just chill a little bit. Okay, I did want to go to sports. The biggest surprise in sports this weekend, it wasn't that the Rangers and the Islanders are trying to outlose one another right now, and they were the two bright spots in New York sports. Although certainly the Rangers are on their way, coming back and rebuilding, and it's a net positive story. I'm troubled by the Islanders, as Tom from Pelham has probably been up all weekend, and I don't blame him. His team has lost 6 in a row. So those are issues to keep a look at, because that's a good hockey team with a good coach. They just don't have any superstars. They don't have any guy grabs them. They lost that because the people that ran the team before the current management had no working forebrains and let one of the best players in the world go away for nothing. Okay. Why? No one knows. They think it was a player uprising. But the Nets, who won yesterday, the Knicks and Nets won yesterday. And the real story here is they both have interim coaches. That's Steve Atkinson, out of nowhere, doing a good job with his team. His best player hurt. His best player hasn't even started with the team yet. He gets fired. And one of the rumors that's evolving out of that is that the Knicks just might hire him. Well, why not? He's a good coach. But here are the potential candidates to replace him. They have an interim coach now. Mark Jackson, the former Knicks point guard, mostly linked to other coaching vacancies, 54 years old. He's now an analyst at ABC ESPN. Jeff Van Gundy, long considered to be the best coach that left the Knicks in recent decades. He is a potential coaching list without Jackson and his ESPN colleague Van Gundy. Like Jackson, the 58-year-old Van Gundy has mostly been talked about as a Knicks candidate. Jacques Vaughn, don't count him out. Now, he's the interim guy right now. He could be the next permanent coach. Tom Thibodeau. Yeah, that's it. the old school former coach president of the Timberwolves. He's been mentioned for several roles. Adam Harrington, a Nets assistant coach. Harrington, 39, worked with Kevin Durant in Oklahoma City. The two have a strong relationship. And Jason Kidd, well, I thought this guy, going to recycle him. The next Icon spent one season as head coach in Brooklyn in 2014, then saw his rights shipped to Milwaukee amid a power struggle with the since revamped Nets front office. He has helped rebuild his reputation as an assistant with the Lakers this season. I don't know. He had some issues. I don't know. He was out in the Hamptons or whatever. He does not have a halo on his head. Some other stories we want to conclude before we open up the telephones and talk with some of our guests, and we'll get to that in a moment. We already talked about the firefighters. Modell's, the place where we all used to go to get inexpensive sporting goods and stuff. The 131-year-old sporting goods chain, Modell's, led by CEO Mitch Modell, is struggling. Gone are happier days when workers hoisted the owner. That's 100 years ago. Anyway, they're preparing to file for Chapter 11. And whether or not any stores will be left, we don't know yet. But we will keep you involved. And locally. And we have a special on affordable housing that we've been working on, and it's not pretty. But the housing's in the news, or rather Harrison is in the news today. Westchester County has a credibility problem when it comes to affordable housing, says David McKay Wilson in LoHUD. The problem came into sharp focus this winter when the Westchester County IDA granted $6.6 million to a Boston-based company that wants vacant office space and construct 450 apartments at 3 Westchester Park in Harrison. The approval came with barely a whimper from Westchester over the project's lack of affordable housing as defined by the 2009 consent decree. And the county's own model zoning ordinances has promoted 31 predominantly white municipalities. Well, Harrison shows Westchester who's the boss. They are going forward without doing any affordable housing. And again, the report that we're working on is frightening. The possibilities of having real, true renaissance, if you will, or real effort in this country to build affordable housing for the lower income among us and the working modest income among us are very low. And we'll have that for you tomorrow. Very low indeed. Because of the price of real estate, NIMBY, not in my backyard, et cetera, et cetera. And all that can do is lead to a social crisis down the road, but we'll get to that. Now, an interesting story, if you like robbery stories, workers out in the aqueduct work track, and they do believe it's workers, it's not done deal, but that's what they believe. They stole $270,000 from the aqueduct racetrack yesterday. Now, the interesting thing is that they had face masks on. But the problem is that so many people had face masks on, it didn't give them very much of a distinction. And just double checking a few other things. Columbia now. Columbia University canceled Monday and Tuesday classes because a person at the school is under quarantine. So you need to know that. My goodness, it's happening everywhere. We have tomorrow, we have a Michigan primary. And right now, Biden's favored to win it. The day after that, March 4 through 6, it's underway as we speak, a Washington primary. Favored is Joe Biden, 36 to 35. Missouri, 53 to 31, Biden. Mississippi, 47 to 21, Biden. Idaho, North Dakota. But the big enchilada, if you will, is Michigan with 125 delegates. By the way, Don snubbed the St. Patrick's Day parade, although I don't do parades so good. Whether he attended or not, I don't care. I don't do ethnic parades. Glad that the president won't be marching in one. Although, okay, I'll go. I'll find out why he's not. Because Nancy Pelosi's efforts to drive discord and disunity have ruined his appetite. What does Nancy have to do? He doesn't want to march in the parade because he doesn't want to get sick, and I don't blame him. Plus... we don't do ethnic parades on this program, ever. I mean, occasionally some of them are well known for shootings, and we have to report the shootings. So if you want your parade to really get broadcast here, shoot somebody. It'll happen. Okay. Oh, by the way, and this just in, they did so far arrest 12 of the kids that beat up that girl. And everybody said, oh, please don't tell their names. They're just children. I get it. Anyway, oh God, Curtis Lewa wants to run for mayor. Well, why not? He couldn't do any worse. All right, we're just going to double check the sports, and then we're going to open up the phones and get ready for our guests, and we'll tell you who and what is doing what. My goodness, you notice I didn't do any sports about pitchers yet. I know I love baseball too, believe me, but I go through this every day with Jake. Really? Thor gave up a home run. His muscles tweaked. This pitcher's trying out to be the 7th starter on the Podunk Devils. Really? Meanwhile, you got the Knicks sold out for a win. You got some other stuff to report. Oh, my God, look, Thor's throwing a pitch. Read a book. Do something. I mean, when the baseball, fine. I love baseball, too. I'm an addict. I talk about hockey all the time. But good grief. He has a quad muscle soreness, and he may not pitch 3 innings tomorrow, just 2.5. It is 6:16. By the way, 33, this is a national report. 33 states now have coronavirus. Missouri coronavirus patient traveled on Amtrak. Disease expert doesn't expect Chinese-level quarantines in the U.S. That's a good thing. Surgeon General says he thinks the virus is contained in certain areas, although you can't trust. He works for a politician, so. You might be buying a hand sanitizer that won't work anyway. State Department amid coronavirus risk, Americans should not travel by cruise ship. That we know. Okay, let's do a reset and wait for our guests. And these are our guests today in our schedule. And we've got Vince Russo coming up in just a couple of minutes at 7:20. George Latimer at 7:35. We'll get the latest on the coronavirus and how he's managing in the county. Jake will be in, and we'll be talking sports and pitchers and everything else with him. At 8:20, we will talk with Janelle Albritton. We couldn't get her in on Friday. And at 8:35, we're going to talk with A.J. Woodson. It was a pleasure last week, right on time. It was a pleasure last week. And if you don't think we get a pleasure from doing certain stories, well, you'd think we didn't have any ego at all. We've been pounding and screaming and yelling and reporting on this radio show in its present form and at my last station, and even the one before that, over Mount Vernon and the Memorial Field, and access to the books. And in a period of 2 weeks, after the current mayor had to deal with the same nonsense that Richard Thomas did, although so far nobody's trying to get her out of office, although the comptroller did threaten to do to her what she did to Richard Thomas. Now comes a story by a friend of this program and a great reporter, Mark Lingriello, and another person, Mr. Bandler, that how come nobody has ever been arrested or gone to jail or really been put before a tribunal or some other such group to become accountable for what happened at Memorial Field. It just hasn't happened. And that story is music to my ears. Because both those issues, okay, were the issues, and I say it all the time, upon which Richard Thomas, and he had his own problems with his finances, and he was arrogant, and he made some bad decisions, and Lord knows he didn't make enough friends. But clearly there was some sort of organized effort to prevent him from making progress on these issues, to use them as political fodder. And maybe the old ends justify the means. They thought he was such a bad mayor, whatever the case may be. But isn't it interesting that he went after the two most corrupt things in that city, and now he's no longer there? There's this thing called Occam's razor, where the most logical issue we should start looking at. What is it that Richard Thomas was trying to uncover that led to a very A, uncommon prosecution, and B, his absolute hounding out of office. And now, after the soldier's dead, comes an investigative report about how come no one went to jail over Memorial Field or got investigated, and what are they going to do about the comptroller. And now, a match lit in the cave where the New York State comptroller lives, after he was begged and pleaded with, and that was one of the things in the story by Lyndon Williams, among others, and the mayor, to please look into Mount Vernon. Bridget Thomas did the same thing. Lyndon Williams did the same thing. Others did. And to her credit, and this is not taking sides because we kind of like the current Attorney General, but the challenger, DA, the challenger, Mimi Rocha, now is saying, why didn't the DA do anything? And I am so glad to get A.J. Woodson's commentary at 8:35. So he'll be with us at 8:35. Tom Abenante at 8:50. We'll be talking budgets with him, but maybe even he'll give the governor a comment for the way the governor is actually set. And we beat him up all the time, and Tom Abenante beats him up as a hobby. But we got to give him credit on this one. He seems to be on the job and doing well regarding the coronavirus. And then we'll talk with Bob Cox. He has a breaking story coming out about Apex. And finally, the study. And we'll get to the bottom of just how much or not our school system was, in effect, cheating or lying or misrepresenting test scores. Just a very quick look at the weather, and we'll talk to Vince Russo in just a moment. Once again, we look at the weather, and the weather's nice. The skies are clear. It's 49, some scattered clouds right now, but today lots of sunshine and breezy, getting up to near 70. Tonight, partly cloudy, the temperature 45. Tuesday, clouds with rain late in the day, temperature 62. Wednesday, partly sunny, the high will be 55. The weather brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhdc.com. Aging Issues Management supports this hour, the top of the hour. So too does the law firm of Pena & Kahn, Dominic's Fine Cigars, and pluginvirtualreality.com. And join me, please, in welcoming. He is a public official in his own right, obviously a commentator and a pundit and an intellectual and just a good guy. Please welcome Vince Russo. Good morning, Vince. Did I not plug you? No, I put the wrong thing on. Sorry. Good morning, Vince.
Good morning, Bob.
I pressed the wrong button.
No, you hit a nerve when you were talking about affordable housing. Here in New Jersey, about, I guess it was 35 years ago or so, there was a decision that came down from the courts called the Mount Laurel decision.
Mm-hmm.
And, again, this comes under the heading of why do people vote for politicians like Donald Trump. The Mount Laurel decision said that because housing in certain communities is expensive, I live in a fairly upscale community, not a very rich one, but it's kind of upscale. And,
elitist
you've got communities like Peapack and Gladstone and places like that that are really expensive. So the court said because those places are expensive, it's racism, that people can't afford houses, so it's racist. So they came down with this Mount Laurel decision, and they said that every community has to provide affordable housing. And there's a group that goes around, and I forget what their name was, that they literally sue every municipality, all 535 municipalities in New Jersey, and force municipalities to provide affordable housing. So we have a double whammy here in my community because we are in what is known as the Highlands Preservation Zone. And the Highlands was formulated here in North Jersey to preserve the water supply.
Uh-huh.
Now, it's not water that we use. It's water that goes down to Newark, Jersey City, and beyond. But we have been included in this preservation zone, I guess because we have aquifers or whatever the heck it is that produces all this water. And what that has done is effectively shut down all development in our borough.
Okay.
So, you cannot build anything here. Okay, so these affordable housing people come along, and they sued us as they sued everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And so we go to court. And we said to the court, well, if we're supposed to build affordable housing, but we cannot do any development, there's no buildable area in our borough to build this affordable housing because of the Highlands, you know what we're told?
What?
That's your problem.
Yeah, well, that's the way it works.
So we're going, it's our problem. Well, you know, if you want me to build something, but there's no place to build it, what do we do? And they go, I don't know. You figure it out. It's your problem. And, you know, it's decisions like this.
It's right out of Dilbert.
That drive people into the arms of, you know, demagogues like Donald Trump, because they're so sick of these courts mandating stuff that in many cases is totally impossible.
All right, let me just give it. This isn't the flip side, and that's what people would say it's the flip side. It articulates the problem a little better. And the question is, how do we deal with it? What's gone wrong? And this is the briefing out of the Apolitical Aggregator, the Week magazine. From cities to suburbs in rural America, the cost of housing has far outpaced increases in salaries. The medium single-family house costs $280,000. Renting is worse. Nearly half of renters are cost-burdened, meaning they spend 30% of their income on rent. Since 1960, renters' average earnings have increased 5% as rents have jumped 61%. And people have little choice. After 2011, more than 4 million units renting for $800 per less went away. Now, are expectations too high? Yes, they are. Buy the biggest house available and hold on to the property steadily growing in value, but that's no longer feasible for many people. In 1980, 18 months of local salary could buy a house in 72 of America's 100 largest cities. Now that's possible in just 25. What's jacking up the costs? Demand above all. Houses are supposed to pass between generations, but baby boomers are living longer and staying put. People are also moving less than ever, down to 10% of the population annually. And hedge funds spent $36 billion on more than 200,000 homes in ailing markets, and their strategy was to evict current residents and target the ultra-wealthy. Since 2011, the average cost of a New York condo rocketed from $1.15 million to $4 million, near $4 million. Why not build more housing? The cost of land and building materials such as timber and steel keeps climbing, and there are major shortages of construction workers that make it financially unfeasible to build low-income housing. In San Francisco, where the median one-bedroom rental goes for $3,700, it costs $7,000. Can NIMBY be defeated? Government initiatives can only achieve so much without current homeowners making concessions. California is plagued by crippling housing costs, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, net. There is no way now economically to build affordable housing. What do we do? How do we fix this?
I don't know. It's a good question. And, you know, see, the other issue that we have here is we're in a little backwater suburb, northern New Jersey. Mm-hmm. And, you know, even if we put affordable housing here, there's no transportation. You know, there's the New Jersey Transit
Well,
buses.
You can't put it up where you are. That's a silly place to do it unless they put the transportation. But they got to put it somewhere.
But we're mandated to do it. You know, we're mandated. So there's no transportation. There's no jobs. You know, there's a few retail stores and stuff around. The cost of things is, you know, fairly expensive.
Well, that's what it
says.
So
you put affordable housing in here, and what do the people who go to these affordable housing units, what do they do? How do they work? How do they...
I thoroughly understand, but this is where government and private enterprise don't come up with elegant solutions. There has to be a way. I don't know what it is, and I'm hearing that you don't either, but a lot of people can't afford to eat anymore. A lot of people can't afford to pay their rent. I don't know what we do.
I don't know what we do either.
And we have a minimum wage problem. Well, yes, it will involve small businesses to have to increase their expenses. There's no easy answer. But and this is what keeps everybody from voting for Donald Trump, is that a lot of people know in their hearts that there is a huge segment of the right that doesn't care if these people die.
That's true too. Yeah.
So Something's got to be done. And as someone who now runs his own business and understands what it's like to make payroll and understands what it's like to maybe make less money than I'm used to or not, if I were younger, I couldn't do this. I'd have to get two jobs. I don't know what the answer is, but we do, as a society, we need to solve that problem. Hey, how's the coronavirus over there in New Jersey? And did you hear my monologue about, I wanted to get your comment on it, about about Woody Allen?
I did hear about Woody Allen.
Isn't that a great irony?
Yeah, it really is. Personally, I never liked Woody Allen.
But that's separate.
I never thought he was funny, and B, he kind of was a slime ball and sleeping with his daughter or something.
The heart wants. I didn't think it was the heart that wanted it, but the heart wants what the heart wants. I think he's got the wrong body part, but whatever.
Yeah, I think that's crazy. The coronavirus, I think, may solve some of these economic problems because the stock market, it just seems to be plummeting every day. The Dow futures
were down the limit.
11,000 points.
Yeah, and now did you do your morning news? Grazie. Did you do your morning news about the oil crisis now that's going to benefit drivers?
Yeah. Oil prices have plummeted as well, although that's driving the stock market way down.
Yes, it is, but so be it. But you know what's cool about that? It does open up possibilities for buying, as you well know.
Well, it's interesting you say that because the first day of the coronavirus, the stock market just tanked like you wouldn't believe, right? Mm-hmm. So I called up my financial guys, and I said, to my guy, I said, very uncharacteristic. I says, is this an opportunity to buy? And he said, well, it's not a crazy idea and all of that and blah, blah, blah. And I said, because this is going to be transient. This isn't going to last. I mean, And so I did make some modest investment on that day. And lo and behold, the next day it went further. And the next day it went even further. And then there was a couple of days where it rallied and, went up 1,000 points. And I said, okay, good, all of this is over. And then the following day it went down again.
So you should have talked to my brother.
And you know what I think? I think once this whole thing blows over, it's going to eventually recover.
Oh, of course it will.
But it's going to be a long time.
My pal of mine, you should know this. You don't buy at the first correction. You don't buy at the first dip. You try and chart it, see how low it can go, look at history and all that. But no, you'll get your money back and more actually. You bought low, but it can go lower. The thing is to look at the trend. And not that I'm any good at investing. If I were an undertaker, nobody would die. It is 6:33.
But it could have lasting effects, though, on the economy. And, one of the things I think that it has pointed out is this fallacy of globalization because, they're saying, oh, my God, most of the drugs that we get, not illegal, I mean the legal prescription drugs, come from China and India. China is effectively shut down. India, fortunately, has not had a lot of I don't think reported any outbreaks yet, but of course they will. And, the fact that we're dependent on these foreign entities for anything is really problematic.
Yeah, but you know what, V? There's no way, I mean, certainly it's like anything else. You don't give someone else to hold your money for you. But it is a global world. There's nothing that's the way it's going to be. That's economics. It's not going to change. We just have to make it work better.
Well, I don't think it can work better. I think that, look, we're not Italy or Greece or one of these little countries that are dependent. Well, what are we going to do? We got to get stuff from other places. And we not at one point, but for a long time, were the manufacturing power in the world, and we gave that all up.
Yeah,
because we allowed these companies to go to places where they can pay somebody 25 cents an hour, instead of $25 an hour, and here's the result of it. Now we're in economic peril because we can't, we can't provide stuff for.
But you know what though?
We couldn't fight World War II again if we tried.
Yeah, but you know what though? But that is also because we liked the lower prices, number one. And number two, we didn't take, everything is short term in this country. We didn't take account of the facts that you're articulating. There's no need to be shortfall. That's what warehouses are for. That, like we do with oil, you can do that with any good and service that's critical, but we don't do it. And I mean, Walmart has that system where they order things a day before it's going to sell, and they put an algorithm together to do it for them. So
Right.
I have to half disagree with the senator from New Jersey on this one. I think that I don't think you can live in a world in isolation anymore. I think those days are
I don't say totally isolated, but boy, oh boy, don't decimate your whole manufacturing industry. For the short term.
But what if I could make more money?
Yeah, I know. Well, that's yeah.
And here's the other part of it. You know those very same people who can't afford an apartment?
Mm-hmm.
If we stop buying goods in countries where 25 cents an hour is a good deal, they can't afford to eat either. And
well, they can't. They could afford to eat because they'd have jobs here. They'd have good jobs.
Okay, if that's okay, but then you wouldn't fit in with the whole rest of the world. Just saying.
Well, we don't fit in with the whole rest of the world now. I mean, it's not a level playing field. That's why I always get annoyed when I hear Tom
Friedman.
Tom Friedman, and he's always saying, the American worker has got to learn to compete with the rest of the world. Well, the American worker can compete in terms of skill and productivity easily. What they can't compete with is somebody making 25 cents an hour.
Well, that's true. Well, listen,
it's
but
just impossible.
You can't compete with my next guest, the county executive, who's going to tell us how we're dealing with the coronavirus. So I thank you very, very much, Vincent.
Say hi to George.
I will say hi to him, and also don't go to Walmart then. I'll talk to you soon. All right. Vince Russo, everybody. We go to our next guest. He's with us each and every Monday. He also was with us last Tuesday for our, it seemed like eons ago, doesn't it, for the Super Tuesday. Please welcome the County Executive, George Latimer. Good morning, County Executive. How are you?
Good morning, Bob. Say hi to Vincent for me, too.
Yeah, I will. He extended that to you. I will. County Executive, we saw you on TV. We saw the governor, who seems to be reacting to this crisis quite well in terms of the way he's communicating and thinking through it. How are things in the county? What's the latest?
Well, the number of cases are growing daily. I don't know what the number will be when the governor announces it. The state is in charge of all the testing. They're trying to make sure there's, I guess, a quality control element statewide. So the governor's announcing the numbers every day. And I don't doubt Westchester is ground zero, and certainly New Rochelle within Westchester is ground zero. If there are 500 cases in the nation, we may have 20% of them right here in Westchester County. But what we have is a centralized contagion. We discussed this a week ago, and it has spread within a particular circle of the travel and the contacts of the individual. And that tells me that really this is much more widespread. We just haven't detected it everywhere, not just in Westchester, but all over. So I don't doubt that as these tests become more available, I think that is a failure to this point, that the testing hasn't been made more available across the board. And, the governor points out the feds. I'll let the higher levels of government work that out. But the higher the testing, the more we're going to find that people have the cases. Now, Bob, here's, to me, the important statistic. It's not how many cases there are. It's how many people have been hospitalized for treatment for these cases. To my knowledge, as we're talking this morning, in Westchester, only one, the original, what they call the index patient. We know his name, but there's no purpose in repeating it now. That the index patient is the only person that has been hospitalized. I'm told he is getting better. Why is that the most important statistic? Because if, in fact, we contract this, you and I and everybody else listening, and our natural antibodies can defeat it, then while it is a serious issue, the vast majority of us will be fine. Now, what does that make public policy? Public policy then becomes protecting the vulnerable parts of the population. And as much dialogue as I've heard about school districts closing, to me, the more vulnerable population are our senior citizens.
Mm-hmm.
And we have, over the weekend, eliminated visitors from coming into nursing homes, assisted living facilities. And, that's in a practical world, that's, going to see mom at Willow Towers, or stopping in to see, your cousin who is currently at United Hebrew, or, Bayberry. Those are obviously New Rochelle-based locations. They're all across the region are affected. But it's stopping any outside contagion inside a nursing home, an assisted living facility.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we've had an across-the-board discussion about what we're going to do with senior recreation programs, which every community has. New Rochelle has Hugh Doyle, and each of the different communities. Eastchester has a program at Lake Isle. Those are still operative. But at some point in time, it's protecting the most vulnerable populations, and the vulnerability comes from weakened immune systems, respiratory problems. So that can be anybody of any age, but it tends to cluster more in the senior citizen ages. So as I look at the number of cases, and someone says to me, by later today, got 100 cases in Westchester. By next week, you have 200 cases in Westchester. The real question is how many people have been hospitalized, and how many people are in serious physical health fighting off this disease. And if those numbers can stay low right now, one person hospitalized and no fatalities, then I consider that to be so far so good. But it's only so far.
Well, as the governor said yesterday, in rather simple math terms, 2 will become 4, 4, 8, 8, 16, and 100, 200, and so forth. We're dealing with an illness that may well spread, and I guess I'm just repeating what you've said, maybe in a summary way, but it doesn't appear to be very fatal or injurious unless you're in one of the threatened classes. Excuse
at
me.
this point, that's what it is.
I'm sorry, I had to
That's
sneeze.
what it appears to. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying I had to sneeze. That's why you didn't hear anything from me. Sorry about that.
Gesundheit.
Thank you, sir.
And make sure you self quarantine in that.
We've got everything here. I've got Lysol, hand washer, you name it, ammonia.
You don't really want to. You don't want to spend the night there. I don't want to spend the night in the offices in the ninth floor of the county office building either.
Imagine if I have to spend it in this little space over by the train station. I'll be like the boy in the bubble.
Invite somebody to come in and be self-quarantined with you. That would be the way to go.
We're talking with County Executive George Latimer. Other business. I'm sorry.
I said we were talking rather flippantly, I might add.
Well, no, I just had to throw flippantly because of my little sneeze. But I think that there's I think, again, the governor he gave that speech Saturday that was, and yesterday again, that was so very balanced about, of course, we need to take it seriously. But let's remember, and he pointed out some of the things that you just did. Now, there are other things going on at the county, and I know people would like a report about that. You made an announcement the other day, and I just misplaced my paper. What's going on?
Well, a couple of different issues are all working at the same time. We had a press conference last week to share that we had communicated with the New York City Department of Environmental Protection, which runs the watershed.
That's it.
That we wanted to prepare a plan to reopen the Reservoir Road that goes over the top of Kensico Dam, and present it for their consideration. We believe, after 18 years, no incidents, that we can secure the road, open it up to emergency vehicles and to limited civilian access to sort of relieve the terrible pressure that we've had on traffic in that area. Downtown Valhalla, for 18 years, has been suffering, extra traffic unnecessarily, and also the Route 22 corridor in North White Plains. And by opening the road with protections, we're not talking about, Wild West, do what you want. A limitation on the vehicles that can go, the times of the hours of the day, nothing at night, security at both corners. Now, we did not get a positive response from the DEP, and I think probably they're working off of the study they've done back shortly after 9/11 or within the next few years after 9/11. And for their purposes, this is the rule, this is what they want to do. So we'll see where we go next, but we think we owe it to the people of Mount Pleasant and North Castle to reassess not just the potential damage. Any idiot can tell that if you could breach the dam, that you'd have a horrific result. But the question is, what is reasonable and proximate? That's like saying, well, because the guy got on the airplane and had a bomb in his shoe, we should never have air traffic and shut down air traffic. You have a method to detect whether a person is coming on an airplane with a shoe bomb or a belt bomb, and you defer that happening. Can it still happen again? Nobody can protect you against every eventuality, but we think that the shutdown of the road was more than necessary in order to secure safety. And we didn't say, hey, open it. Let us put a plan together, which we'll consult with the state and the feds and everybody else. So the negative response was unhelpful. I'm going to respond to their letter today, and we're going to press on. That's one issue that's been percolating along the side. This is an important week in the census 2020. This is the week that individuals will be mailed to their home address information that will allow them to go online and complete the census. Now, we put a lot of emphasis on trying to get an accurate count. If we get an accurate count, then every one of these communities and Westchester as a whole, all the communities, will know exactly how many people live here. And many times the grant monies you get from the state and the federal government are allocated based on population. So if you have an undersized count that doesn't reflect your population, you don't get fair share money. And it also is true that you don't get fair share representation when districts are apportioned by population. So the Census 2020, this is the first phase of it. This is not the intense phase, because most people that have a computer will know how to use the code, will go online and file, will do it easily. And those are the folks who are probably going to get counted no matter what. But as many of those people as can file electronically, that's that many people out of the system that we have to hunt down through first mail and then in-person interviews. And we're just trying to make sure everybody understands how important it is. There are certain people that are hard to count situations based on demographics, but we're going to do our best to help the census. We don't do the census ourselves. The U.S. Census Bureau does that, personnel. But we're going to try very hard to create a climate by which when the census person, communicates with you, you know what they want, why they want it, and you're able to comply. And we think that's an important issue. I also want to mention yesterday was the last day of the Section 1 high school girls and boys basketball tournament. We had it for 1 week up at the county center. You remember this was a big thing when I walked in the door.
Oh, yeah.
2 years ago. They were pulling out of the county center and going elsewhere. And, the Section 1 people of that time, there's a different crew now, criticized the county for the way we worked. And I think that the reason why it wasn't there was one part, the way the county had approached it, but also one part, the Section 1 leadership of that day. We now have a new head, Todd Santa Barbara, who's a terrific guy. We negotiated. We brought the tournament back into the county center. I was there to watch a 1-point game between Henrik Hudson girls versus Harrison girls. It was exciting. The place was rocking. It's a place where students can go and jump and yell and scream just like any other game. And then Rye followed the next game. Rye boys finished out the tournament by beating defending state champion Poughkeepsie. It was impressive, and by a lot. And it was a big victory for Section 1 winners for the Rye Garnets, which is the town that, I live in, and my daughter went to that high school and another. So long story short, that's a success. It's a small success, but it's a success story. If you can reduce the number of bridge strikes, that's a success story. If you can get the basketball tournament back in the county center, that's a success story. That's not the meat and potatoes of government. But those are things that county decisions, and we did the right thing, and we got the right result, and we're very proud about that. Also, in light of all this coronavirus stuff, I marched in my first of many St. Patrick's Day parades up in Buchanan, which is right in the shadow of Indian Point. And we had a lovely day. I marched with the mayor, Teresa Knickerbocker, and the town supervisor was there, Linda Puglisi. And we reconfirmed our town, village, county work to try to help Buchanan, because they're going to take a terrible hit when Entergy closes Indian Point. And it was a lovely day for the wearing of the green. There's going to be many more of these parades in many more communities, and we did it safely and happily, and we hope we'll have a great celebration of Irish American heritage as we celebrate every heritage. We have Black History Month, and we have Women's History Month, and we have the Italian American celebrations around Columbus Day, and we celebrate our Latin American friends from Mexico at Cinco de Mayo, and it's a big mosaic, and we're all Americans first, but we all treasure our heritage. And this is a good month to treasure our Irish heritage.
640, we're talking with County Executive George Latimer here on Radio Westchester. He is with us each and every Monday morning with the County Report. People are still concerned, waiting for the other shoe to drop on the state budget. Tom Abenante will be with us later today. Any indications thus far on how we may be impacted regarding Medicaid?
Well, we haven't seen any change from the original plan. The original plan would hit the county as hard as a $20 million hit next year, a $10 million, $11 million hit this existing budget, an $11 million hit in the middle of the year without funding will be a very severe hit. And by the way, keep in mind the money we're spending now to fight the coronavirus, none of that was anticipated or budgeted. Who could have budgeted that? That's when you go into reserve funds. But our reserve funds we're trying to build back since we went through them like a knife through butter in prior cycles.
Yes.
So that comes in question. And if you've noticed, as happy as you are when you gas up your car and how low the prices are, the lower the gas prices, the less sales tax revenue the county and the municipalities get. So our revenue stream on the sales tax side may be impacted by these low prices. I understand there's an OPEC price war going on.
Yes.
That's well beyond my pay grade. But whatever the impact is, if it lowers the total revenue that we achieve from sales tax, then we're going to have a budget issue in the county, as will other governments, as this year goes along. And we may see a downturn in this economy. I know that it's been trumpeted that what a great economy we have, but truthfully, the economy is many times outside of the control of those of us that are elected.
Of course, it is. Yeah.
We might want to take credit. We take credit when it's good. Oh, look at us, we did this. We cut taxes, but you know from being in corporate America, Bob, and so do I, long-term decisions are made by corporations based on long-term view of what's happening. They don't say, oh, you cut my taxes this year, oh, I'm going to spend a whole lot more money. That doesn't work that way. And I think most people who understand know that. But we've been riding a good tide. You go back to the terrible 08-09 recession we had and how we pulled out of that. And we pulled out of it in 09 and 10 and 11, and we're still riding that wave today. We didn't create the wave today, but we're riding the wave today. And that wave may be coming to an end given coronavirus, given the oil crisis, and some other things that are happening.
Wow, that's a mouthful. We were going to ask you about sales tax because some of the numbers that we had seen, John Bailey was in here the other day, for a good stretch there, the tax revenues were up. But you're absolutely right. The oil situation could really could reverse that trend substantially. Anything else you want to shout out about while I have you, County Executive? And maybe you can give us a final summary on where the county's headed with the coronavirus.
Yeah, well, we're meeting this morning with the school superintendents. The county does not control what school districts do. People of country, why don't you close the schools? I don't have the power to do that. That's a state education department authority. The schools don't report through the county. But we're going to meet with the superintendents today to try to understand their needs and see if we can fold them in to the needs that we have within our structure. And then over and above that, we're going to meet as an executive team to discuss our next round of activities. And as I said, I think our discussions are going to focus on how do we protect the senior population as the targeted population. We think we'll get the best long-term health results if we can figure out strategies. And we haven't made the point to start to cancel events yet. Some groups on their own cancel different events. It's not across the board. The parade went in Buchanan yesterday, the basketball tournament. When I said to somebody, I said, what are you going to do with the county center? I said, well, the Knicks and the Nets are packing 17,000 people in their arenas every night, and then the hockey teams are doing the same thing. So when this reaches a point at which we understand it is a societal impact, then you're going to watch the NBA and the NHL do things, and then it won't. We'll follow, but we'll take leadership on the local level. But there's some major events that happen, but there's major economics behind those events.
Oh yeah.
I don't want to sound like the mayor. I don't want to sound like the mayor of that village in Jaws. He didn't want to close the beaches, and the white shark was out there. But I think you have to know the shark is there, and it's dangerous. And if these numbers continue to grow, then we'll take more severe action. But we're not going to take preemptive action if it's not warranted, because a lot of people will be hurt when we take those actions. You close the school district. What do the mothers who work for a living do?
They don't go to work.
What do they do?
They don't go to work.
They don't go to work. And are their jobs kept by their bosses? Maybe. But if they work in a low-level job, the boss might just as easily fire them.
Yep.
And then, that there are ramifications when people just say things. They generally say it from their own perspective, how it affects them. And right now, there's a lot of fear out there, and it's a legitimate concern. But this is the balancing point that you've mentioned. I think the governor's striking that pose. I'm doing my best. Mayor Bramson is. The other community leaders are doing the same. Be concerned. Be active. Take steps. But do not freak out. And at the same time, do not underplay this. Do not say, oh, it's all going to be fine. Don't worry, be happy. Neither extreme is the right approach. It's an intelligent, down the road, down the middle, look at facts, decide based on facts, not ideology, not partisanship, not, the itch you want to scratch. But I think that's ultimately how we're going to be judged as leaders. People will say, were they rational? Did they make intelligent decisions? Even if some of them don't turn out perfect decisions. Were they plausible, reasonable decisions? Or did they follow some ideological or partisan track because they wanted to make political points out of it? And we're trying our very best to do a good job. And I hope that with each passing day, we do a good job.
Well, you know what? I must say, as I mentioned earlier at the start, yourself, the governor, Mayor Bramson, I think the messages have been consistent and clear and balanced, and that has been a good thing. Just one thing anecdotally, you've been to the radio station here. Looking out, there are less people running for trains than there were, let's say, 2 weeks ago, and it is noticeable. So hopefully people...
No question.
Go ahead.
No, you're right, Bob. There's no question. Just in the last few seconds I have, I think that's one of the important things out of this, which is if an individual can commute from home, that's a smart thing to do. Work from home. That's a smart thing to do. Certainly, if they're sick, stay home. That's just common sense. There's no reason to push yourself if you don't have to. Not everybody has that option.
No, they do not. County Executive, thank you very, very much. Good luck. And if you need to get the word out in any way, we will break into anything that we're doing. Thank you so very much, George Latimer.
Thank you, Bob.
Take care.
Good work. Bye-bye.
Thank you. County Executive George Latimer. We're going to put Jake in the seat of honor. We have much to talk about with him. All righty, let's take another look at the weather. We want to be sure you are appraised of the good news. And the good news certainly is the weather this morning. It is 50 already, on its way to, it's going to kiss 70, if not a big fat wet one. At 68 is the official forecast now. We have scattered clouds now have turned into clear skies, and it's lots of sunshine but breezy. Again, temperatures kissing 70. Tonight, partly cloudy. The temperature will be 45. The wind out of the southwest, 5 to 10 miles an hour. Tuesday, cloudy with rain late in the day. A temperature of 62. And on Wednesday, more sun, but partly sunny, really. The temperature getting up to 55. And then it'll be cold at night, 40 degrees. But we will take it. This early spring has sprung, and the weather brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. And it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. And it's that time, as it is every day as we approach the 8 o'clock hour. Jake Schaefer is with us, our sports guy, our gambling analysis guru, producer extraordinaire. And his segment, as always, is brought to you by Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection of Arturo Fuente, Patrons, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located on Boston Post Road in Larchmont. They're open 7 days, and also he gets to hold me accountable for the picks I made the other day. Please welcome, without further ado, Jake Schaefer. Good morning, Jake.
Morning, Bob.
What's up?
Well, the train on Friday coming in and going back was absolutely a ghost town on Friday. There was
Really?
a lot more passengers today. I didn't know what to expect.
Okay, well, it's a Monday, too, but there's a lot less people in the parking lot than there usually are, that's for sure. And running for the train, as you look over my shoulder, you get to goggle at I wouldn't look out the window at anybody running, no matter how good they looked or not. Not like you. Anyway, do we know how I did with my picks? And then I have some sports things to bring up with you.
Yes, you were 4-3, bringing your record to 32-26 on this.
How was our young boy?
Season. Couldn't track him down. I hope the virus didn't get him.
Well, let's hope so, because he was running ahead of me a little bit.
I'll call the hospitals in Ohio later today.
Do we want to pick tomorrow?
You mean for tonight's games?
Yes, that's
Yeah,
what I meant.
sure.
Well, okay, let's go. Let's go, and then I have stuff to talk with you about, boy, for sure. Go ahead.
Blues at home against the Panthers.
Blues.
Capitals on the road, favored against the Sabres.
Boy, have they been playing badly, but they have to come back. Give me the Caps.
Jets at home, slight favorites against the Coyotes.
Give me the Dogs on that one. I'll take an underdog there.
Oilers at home,
Apparently-
favored against the Golden Knights.
Knights.
And the Kings with no line against the Avalanche. The Kings are at home.
Avalanche.
Wow, 3 underdogs and 2
Woof,
favorites.
woof, woof. The Dogs are hounding tonight. And the Marrone's picks, temporary picks, brought to you by Dominic's Fine Cigars. All righty, you got to help me out here, Jake. Why, with one of the greatest superstars hurt and the other superstar not even joining the team yet, why did the Nets follow their coach? They're saying it was the players.
Well, the players denied that, but it has to have been the players. Atkinson is a great coach. He'll be snapped right up. Maybe the Knicks will grab him.
How does that happen? I mean, is it?
He's not a players coach. He's a lot like Thibodeau. He's tough. He has tough practices. He cares about defense. Today's NBA players, especially people like Kyrie Irving, certainly not going to flourish with him.
But here's the problem, and again, I don't know enough about that sport anymore. If they're left to their own devices, can they win?
Without a coach, without a real coach.
Without a coach that's making them play defense.
Well, I think talent comes first, and not a lot of players are more talented than Kevin Durant. And
Well,
he'll be
that's
back-
when he
and
comes.
He'll be back next year.
And what
which
about-
is
what
what
about
they don't
Kyrie
care
Irving?
about this year.
What about Kyrie Irving?
He's a handful. I certainly would not want him on my team, but he's as talented as any point guard in the league when he wants to play. Remember, he's the kid from Duke who claimed that the world was flat.
He still believes that?
I don't know what he believes, but he made.
So a dummy like that gets a great coach. That's so weird. It happened in hockey once, and it worked. The Rangers in '93 got rid of one of the best coaches in the history of the game, Roger Nielsen, because they felt that he was too defensive oriented. And it turned out that he was, at least for that team. But it leaves a bad taste in my mouth. It's the one thing that because he won a cup, that Messier never gets criticized for, and he should be. He undermined that coach terrifically, who's now in the Hall of Fame, by the way. But
Players League, players come first.
well, not so much in hockey, though. Fortunately,
I mean in basketball.
No, but because if you look at again, I always go to the Columbus Blue Jackets. They got nothing, and they're still in a playoff spot, and they've talk about it straining every inch. They lost their 4 best players to free agency. Their fifth best player, actually could be their best, he was a defenseman, and their best goal scorer out hurt. And he has like 16 ties. In other words, he makes them play so close to the vest that they get points. They hang in there. Coaching does matter. And anyway, it's interesting. As it does, we see in Philadelphia now, the Philadelphia Flyers coming back. Okay, so that happens in basketball. Any word? What's the spin on this new GM?
For the Knicks,
Yeah.
be interesting to see what kind of a coach he picks up. He really doesn't have any players that he has to worry about. He doesn't have any superstars that he has to, appease. But it'll be interesting to see what kind of team he builds next year. It seems like he's got that influencer, who's I think is his number 2 guy. I don't even know what kind of free agents. I don't think there's a big free agent class available this coming year. They were talking about getting an aging superstar, Chris Paul.
Chris Paul's 34, 35 years
With
old.
Carmelo Anthony, which makes 0 sense to me.
Carmelo?
Yeah. But we'll see
Who
what
wants
they
to
do.
go down that road again? Wow. Carmelo was the New
Well,
York.
Chris Paul and Carmelo are best friends.
Okay.
So
All right. Well, that I guess that makes friends, but I guess that makes sense. But when Carmelo was a Knick, he was a good player, but he was always reminded me of a guy that's always going to come in second. Great player. He needed somebody above him. The guy who for a couple of years made a huge difference, but then his legs gave out on him was Stoudemire. That guy made a huge difference.
Too many injuries.
He had too many injuries, but he could carry a team for a while.
Yeah, he was a great player.
And at least I thought he could. All right, once again, why do you think so many people are getting hurt? And wait a minute, how did I miss this story? When I did my sports stories today, I absolutely passed over it. What kind of trainers and doctors miss a rib fracture for 6 months? And I got news for you. This happened in hockey. You know this guy Kreider who's out now with a broken foot? He had that problem. They had to take the rib out because that particular rib where it is doesn't get a lot of blood supply. That's why it happened in September, and that's why it's not healed. And why they think it's going to heal on its own, I think, is a fool's mission from what I've read. I don't expect it to. But how did they miss that? Did they fire the doctors yet?
Not yet, but it seems like there's a lot of incompetence going on with the Yankees medical staff.
Well, maybe they hired the ones that were with the Mets a couple of years ago.
Severino, one of their great pitchers, he's done for the year. Paxton's out for half the year. Who knows about Stanton? Who knows about Judge?
Don't they give them physicals in the off season as they get ready for training camp?
I would hope so. I had to get one for high school football.
No, I bet you did. Okay. Now, my grandson had to get one just to play high school hockey. All right. I had a couple of other items I wanted to ask you about. If I have to look at the paper, if I have to read about one more pitcher whose fastball was 96 miles an hour, Thor gave up a home run. Met fans are jumping off the Empire State Building in record numbers. Kano, I mean, why is this annoying me so much? Is there anything going on in sports worth reporting about?
You didn't? Did you see Syndergaard's devices he had on his back while he pitches? His sensors.
Before. Oh yeah, what are they?
Track motion of his ball. Now, is that cheating or not?
Of course
Looks
not.
a lot like the buzzers the Astros supposedly were wearing.
No, I think that's what they do is they put these guys on a machine now. They the release point, the number of times the ball spins. It's getting a little silly, but I guess it's progress. I guess it's progress. All right, we're relying on you for this next topic. What's going on in college basketball as we move towards?
Well, I was going to go to the Big East tournament this week, but I don't know if I'm going to go now. I don't know if I want to go to the Garden.
To get diseased?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't made up my mind.
Wear
yet.
a helmet, like a space helmet, like Ed Norton does in The Honeymooners.
I'll think about that.
A helmet or a plastic bag over your head, or go with a hazmat suit. But now, so who's still favored? Who's in? Who's out? What's going on?
Well, there's a three-way tie for first place between Seton Hall, Creighton, and Villanova. And Seton Hall's very unlucky. They pulled the 3 seed, so they have to play. I believe they play Marquette Thursday at 9:30 at the Garden.
9:30 at night? How come so late?
Well, they have all those teams. They got to get the games through this week.
Oh, I see.
There's like
now,
5 games a day.
Is Seton Hall Cinderella team? Are they going to get knocked out anyway? Because one of the things I've always said is if you're going to win the cup or you're going to win a trophy, you got to beat the first place team sooner or later. I mean, you'd hope somebody knocks them off. But you know what? If you earn it and you deserve it, you'll beat the first place team. No? Am I missing something?
Well, you never know. Sometimes you get lucky and, the 2 seed loses in the first round. So instead of playing the 2 seed in the second round, you play the 15 seed. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of a break. I remember when Syracuse made the Final Four the last time they got that huge break. So you never know what's gonna happen.
How is that great arena they have? Is it the Carrier Dome?
Mm-hmm.
What, is it that great? Is it that?
No, it's not that great. It's just enormous. Not that great to watch games at.
Why?
Just too big.
It is too big. How many people? What does it seat? How many people?
The big games, when Duke comes to town, they get close to 40,000.
It's that big?
And it's chopped in half because it's a football stadium, so you only get half of it
but
full
it is
for
domed. Oh, okay.
the basketball games.
They should do an outdoor. Well, they can't do an outdoor hockey game because it wouldn't be outdoor because it's a dome stadium. You've been in it? I've
course.
never been in a dome ballpark. What's it like? Notice the difference?
Yeah, I wouldn't know how you could shoot a basketball. It would just seem you'd notice there's just so much space. It's so much. It's the complete opposite of being in a small little gym.
Yeah, but the focus is on the rim anyway, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but there's still peripheries and looking behind the basket and so much space.
Yeah,
It's
that's
the
true.
direct opposite of the Duke Cameron Indoor Stadium.
Well, one of the cool things about glass and hockey that people don't realize players are doing, like when a defenseman's going back for the puck, you look over your shoulder, but you also look in the glass, to see who's where behind. You look in the glass to see if there's a guy on the other side of the rink to wrap it around. Mm-hmm. There's a dirty little play in hockey when that happens. If a team is killing a penalty or tired, really tired, like when you see them get hemmed in their end, particularly in the second period when you have the long change, what you teach a guy to do is wrap it around the glass but high. Why do you think that is?
Well, to get as much distance on the puck as possible.
But why do you think you want it high, like maybe head level? You want to stand in front of the pizza? Go ahead. And it's totally fair. It's not mean. In other words, if it's waist level, you just pop into it. But if it's face level, you're not putting your face there. So you teach a guy that's really desperate to put a hard wrap on it and wind it on the glass. It's some of the nice, dirty little tricks of hockey. All right, what else is going on in the world of sports? How did your XFL do this weekend?
I enjoyed the game last night between Los Angeles and the Florida team. And again, it's great because you turn it on and the game's winding down and you see, it's 9 points, no chance, this game's over. But then you realize you can go for a 3-point play after you score a touchdown to get the 9 points in one possession.
Now, as someone who follows the NFL and watches this, in terms of the level of play, what aspect of the game is NFL like? Or is it hard to distinguish?
It's very different. A lot of different rules in the NFL. To make a catch, you have to have 2 feet inbounds. Here, you need 1. You saw the kickoffs.
Yeah.
That's all different. The clock management is completely different. The players obviously aren't as good. I would say maybe 40% have spent time in the NFL.
Now, and is there any aspect of the game, for example, receivers, safeties, linemen, that seem as good as the National League?
No.
National Football League? No. So they're all a cut down?
Yes.
All right. So it is more like AAA. Yes. See, if you go to and I always use hockey as an example, depending on which line is out in the American League, it doesn't look any different, American Hockey League. The biggest difference, and I love this, is the subtlety in close to the net with hands. In other words, sharp passes that result in a goal. If you look at the AHL scoring, and this is where it's dropped, anyone with any real high skill level with the puck's already in the NHL because it's watered down that way. But everything else about the game, same speed, the defense behaved the same way, the forward, you can't tell the difference, it's just as fast, except around the net, those last few passes and putting it under the bar, you just don't see it the way you do in the NHL. And if you look, like the best scorers, like 11 goals, 12 goals, like 30, 40 goals. If they could do that, they'd be up already. A lot of guys are in the NHL should be in the minors, but that's all changed now. A lot of guys are in the NHL are in the minors because they make too much money. There's a guy on Montreal's farm team makes $6 million a year. So, what else you got for me? Anything else in the world of sports, Jake? Anything coming that we should be looking at?
No, just getting ready for March Madness. That's always a lot of fun. Baseball's coming before you know it. We'll have a little baseball preview show.
Yeah, and then I'll take
week.
it seriously, and then we'll have Jake's picks back when baseball comes. One more thing about March Madness. Who do you like?
Got to see the brackets first. It's so hard to tell without seeing who goes where, who they have to play. But a week from today, I will make my Final Four predictions.
Okay.
The brackets will be out.
That's what we need. All righty. Perfect timing. Jake's Picks of the Week and Jake's segment was brought to you by Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente Padrons and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located on Boston Post Road in Larchmont. All right, the phone is ringing. Somebody's there. Well, I think it's Janelle, but we're going to put them on no matter who they are because for a change, we are a slight bit ahead of schedule. This is Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am Bob Marrone. This is Radio Westchester, your radio station at the train station on this sunny Monday. It's going to get up to 70 degrees today. Good morning. You're on the air.
It is Janelle. Good morning.
morning. Janelle is the managing editor of the Westchester County Post.com. She's been a busy woman. She has a lot to talk about today. Be sure to go to that website. All kinds of great stuff on wellness, great sports stuff with our regular guest, Steve Callis, the editor of her sports section. What's going on, Janelle Albritton? And then don't leave without telling us where you're performing next. She's also an opera. She's a jazz singer. No, don't start opera singing at me. She's a jazz singer in addition to being a videographer, helping people in prisons, being a wellness coach, and of course, as the publisher of her newspaper and videography content. What's going on?
Well, I'll just make a slight correction. I don't have MountVernonPost.com. That would be the printed version. The digital version is WestchesterCountyPost.com.
Okay, right.
And there's, a lot of things happening. And I focus on arts and entertainment, sports and wellness, food and drink. Those are the three main areas. And as of later today, I will officially have up a community calendar section featuring events in all four cities, plus Dobbs Ferry and Mount Kisco. However, other nonprofits will be able to go in there and click on a link and add their own event information to all 6 areas, no matter where the event is or no matter where the nonprofit is based.
Okay.
So that's going to be a free service that will be extended to folks everywhere, really. They can be down in the city. They can be in New Jersey, Connecticut. As long as they're a nonprofit, they can post for free into the community calendar. So that's
pretty
exciting.
Cool. That is very, very cool. Good for you.
Yeah.
Now, what's your take as a person who deals with public health? You're a master's in public health. What's your take on the coronavirus concerns? We're getting balanced reports from the governor, from George Latimer, the county exec, Mayor Noam Bramson. The president is, even though he says the odd duck thing here and there, generally the report is balanced. What say you as someone who's worked in this field?
I do think that this is a case where we need to hope for the best and plan for the worst. It's officially a pandemic. I haven't seen anything quite like this. We're not really sure really all the details about this. We don't have all the test kits. We don't have a system in place. We've got a president who's minimizing it and giving bad advice, and telling people just to go to work and don't worry, you'll get over it. So we've got it has the potential to be a perfect storm. And my science friends, my health friends that I've spoken with briefly are very, very concerned. And so I do see the impact. I was at Second Sunday Jazz at the Presbyterian Church last night here in Mount Vernon. They have a jazz series. And the crowd was just decimated. There was maybe 15% of the usual.
Yeah, well,
usually it's packed wall to wall, and last night there were maybe 30 people. I felt very sad for the performers. But I understand the crowd tends to be older, and they may be more vulnerable, and they just didn't want to be in a crowded room.
Well, we're not seeing the same crowds at the train station either. As I look out the window now, even though, it's 8:18, it's like a ghost town.
Yes, and I interviewed an Uber driver last night. He said they are very, very busy, and which is, good for him. He drove from Mount Vernon into Williamsburg. He says it took him about 20 minutes.
Well, yeah, traffic is a little lighter as well.
Because traffic was so light. And
you know what? Go ahead, I'm sorry.
And at the airport, he said nobody's flying. He said a taxi driver friend of his, usually they cycle through. They have a waiting area where they get called to go to the taxi stand. And the line is just constantly moving. And he told me that his friend said that he sat in the holding area for 2 hours before he got a call to the taxi stand.
Mm-hmm.
And he said it reminded him very much of 9/11, post 9/11,
Mm-hmm.
where tourism was down, people canceled their vacations, etc.
See, my concern is this, and just my pedestrian look at it. It appears that we do have a pandemic of a not that malevolent disease.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a difficult thing to balance, because pandemic means, my God, we're all going to die like the Black Death. But one of the things that most of the commentators are probably right about, at least as evidenced thus far, is that you may get sick, you may not even get sick. It's not going to kill you or put you in the hospital unless you're in compromised shape, which is, of course, very important. But it's not like the plagues of the past. And I think people hear the word pandemic and they think that. And so that's a tightrope, isn't it? But again, that's my pedestrian take. Yours is more learned.
Well, epidemic has to do with more of a local area where there's something contagious happening. Pandemic is, like every continent
Right.
on the planet is
what we
having
have.
an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Pandemic has more to do with the geographic scope
Right.
and the ease of transmission, but not necessarily with the level of fatality.
Right.
Ebola, thank God
SARS,
Ebola was never hit pandemic proportions. We'd really be in a lot of trouble. But like something like Ebola could really just have apocalyptic proportions if it's not, well managed the way it was in Africa. An infectious disease friend of mine was detailing what that work was like, and the Ebola workers very rightly deserves a place on the cover of Time magazine, if you recall.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
They had multiple covers for that. But look, let's be honest. There is no way that people before 3 months ago, in the last 5 years, that people in Westchester County always wash their hands properly after every time they use the toilet, after every time they sneeze, put mucus on a Kleenex, and then touch a handrail. I mean, we normally have very bad practices. Yes. I know even when I'm in the ladies' room, there's some women in the stall, they flush the toilet, and they walk straight out of the bathroom.
No, they do not.
And I know men do it too. I mean, and men don't even tell me, because I know there's no way. They'll say if I'm waiting outside of a single, like a unisex bathroom in a restaurant, and I'm waiting outside, and I hear the toilet flush, and immediately the door opens, and the man walks out. I'm like, I know you did. There's no way you had time to wash your hands. So we've become very lazy and very complacent, and we've got bad habits, and this is a good time to start really looking at our hygiene habits and teach our children well, just to practice good hygiene. Don't sneeze out into the open air. Sneeze into the crook of your elbow if that's the fastest solution you can come up with.
And what about shaking hands? We got to get back to the old fist pump.
Yeah, I mean, when there's a problem like this, shaking hands is not a good idea because people don't have good habits.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't even do a fist bump. I would.
What about the new elbow pump?
I would go back to. I lived in Thailand for 2 years. I just put my hands together and do a little, sawadee ka to somebody. And
how are you? My hands are crossed right now, as if I was praying like that, bowing down.
Yeah, just, palms together and raise your thumb up to your chin and just say, I mean, I may even start saying sawadee ka and
Well, you know what?
Make it funny.
What about the old Brooklyn stanza? Hey, how you doing? That works.
I don't know if I could pull that one off.
Yes,
but
you could with your perfect language and California breeding. Come on, give it a shot. Go, hey, how you doing?
People actually tell me some people tell me I have a California accent, and others say, oh, no, really? You lived in California for over 30 years? you don't have a California accent. I never would have known.
I didn't even know that there was one. The Midwest and Californians talk pretty well. Well, you don't have any like that Valley. You know, you never finish your statements with a question. So I was looking at the virus. It's like, that's one beef I have with NPR, you know, because and I love NPR, by the way, but because they want to be all inclusive, sometimes they sound a little silly. It's just the way it is.
Well, I think that's a mannerism culturally. I hear that a lot with the Australians.
And the Valley.
They end everything with a little bit of a lilt up at the end.
The Valley? And then there's this thing, you know what verbal fry is? It's this thing that they teach at some beach school where you let
it's
it
a
all
pet
come.
peeve of mine.
Yeah,
I
it should
I
be a
do
pet
not.
peeve. I remember I studied at that college, and that's what I'm doing.
Well, the fry has more to do with that raspy tone.
Right. That's what
and the tone, instead of going up, it sometimes goes down as well. And it's just, it's an affectation. I find it, it's unfortunate.
Well, when I first came to radio, I thought that the NPR style wasn't an affectation, and I found out that it is. That you're actually trained to talk that way, like to be understated. You know, like today a plane crashed in the Caribbean, 4,000 people were killed.
Yeah, delivery is important.
And our show was brought to you today by, and we're supported by. Anyway, all right. So what else?
You can fall asleep when you're sitting by the fire.
Yeah, that's the only thing. And then there's what I like to do with my friend Jeannie Zano comes on, a great political analyst. She's doing a lot of work she's on hiatus from us because she's on like 18 million hours a day on Bloomberg television. But every once in a while, I would kid her. I'd come on and I'd play like some obscure, I should say, jazz piece. And now we're going to talk. 17 people were killed in a bus today. It was a political killing in the city of Mumbai. We now talk to Jeannie Zano, and then she get all angry at me. But anyway, all right, what else is going on? We are alive.
I do like your NPR voice, Bob.
Well, I can do I can do my serious NPR voice, which has to have me get rid of any sign of testosterone and take it down here, and then I could do it. Anyway, go ahead. What's going on? Males are not wanted on NPR by and large. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, let's see. We've got the Boys and Girls Club of Mount Vernon is having their big gala bash on March 25.
I hope they go forward with it.
Oh,
because that's
yes,
great. Yeah,
I'm sure they will. And in May, I believe it's May 20, the animal shelter of Mount Vernon is having its gala. So if people want to know what's going on, like I said, in this community calendar, there's going to be some flyers coming up soon. It's just coming online today. I'm very excited about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, spring is coming, and so it's going to be kind of gala season, so it's going to be time. And also it's a political season unlike any other that I know of in my lifetime. And so,
that's because you're young. 68 was like this. 68 was even worse. So, except we didn't have a president that broke all the rules. So, but that was different.
Well, yeah, 68 was a tough year. You had Martin Luther King and Bobby Kennedy assassinated just months apart, and that cannot. I can't imagine what it was like to.
I was working for Bobby Kennedy at the time. I was handing out leaflets. It was one of the few times I got very involved in politics, and my sister woke me at 3 a.m. to tell me what happened. Broke my heart.
Yeah, I would say that would be a heartbreak. Indeed, and
but
I won't say how old I was when that happened.
No, don't you dare! No, I don't want to die. I don't
remember.
We don't. That's it. We don't speak ages on this program. It is 7:28, except when the purpose is to abuse the host. 7:28. We're talking with Janelle Albritton. She's the managing editor of the Westchester County Post and the WestchesterCountyPost.com. She's also a videographer. She is a public health professional. She's involved in a lot of things, and she also is a performer of some note, quite talented. And we've seen and we've heard her sing. What kinds of gigs do you have coming up?
Ooh, let's see. This Thursday, I'll be up at Tony's at J House Greenwich, and with the Dan Schnapp Quartet.
The Dan
Always a good
Schnapp?
time.
Is that like SCHNAP? Schnapp?
2 P's.
2 P. Schnapp. Okay.
Schnapp.
Schnapp. Got it.
And he's a brilliant piano player. I love performing with him. And then also on March 20, I'll be back at Toscana in Tuckahoe on Main
I like
Street.
that place, yes.
So that's going to be fun. And I'll be also performing at the New Rochelle Opera
Yeah, you
Gala.
told me that. When is that? It's in
That's,
May.
I believe that's May 20.
I can't wait to see. I'll probably be going to that. What do you do? Even on the air, you have a nice, smooth voice. No verbal fry here. What do you do to protect your voice? I ran into Pavarotti in Boston once.
Did he hurt you?
No, Pavarotti was a terrific guy. Oh,
Oh, you
you're an
just
idiot.
ran
I
into
swear to
him?
God, Janelle. Randy, I got that.
Gotcha.
I was a little slow. Okay, you're messing
Gotta
with
be
the
quick,
wrong guy.
Bob.
Okay, fine. Do not look this animal in the eye. Keep your arms and legs inside the tram, Janelle Albritton. But it was the wintertime, and we were at the Copley Plaza, and I was on my way in, and he came out the door. By the way, I still have the thing that he signed for me. I should sell it. But at any rate, he had his face wrapped in he had his like a thing over his mouth. And he said the cold air hurt his voice, and he doesn't like to mess with it. What do you do to keep your voice tuned?
I talk to you.
Well, you talk to me like that. Now that's even better. Why don't you continue
No.
doing that and make my morning?
Well,
Hate
I'm not an opera singer, and so as much as I wish I had that kind of chops and pipes, I don't. They say that the diuretics are not good. A lot of alcohol, coffee dries things out, so they suggest avoiding that. I don't drink a lot of coffee. I drink alcohol on a fairly regular basis, mostly wine with dinner.
And
I try
celery
to stay
juice.
hydrated.
Good God, celery. How's
my
your celery
celery
juice going? Ugh.
I love my celery juice every morning, and it really is trending. Hashtag celery juice heals. Hashtag
God
medical
help us.
medium.
Jesus.
He's got a new book coming out
Celery
called
juice.
Cleanse, with a little wedge of a watermelon on it. I highly
I love
suggest
watermelon.
you pre-order it.
I love watermelon.
The man has completely changed my relationship to food and juicing and all that stuff, and I'm grateful to him for that. We just have to, cold air can be difficult. For me, it's mainly staying hydrated and running my scales, because singing is an extremely muscular, mental, emotional.
Oh, well,
full
we
body,
know it's
full
emotional. Now,
brain
you said run your
experience.
scales. Does that mean before maybe you're sitting in the house? Is that what you do?
Yes, I do that. Somewhat. I practice some techniques that I've learned from I've had some great vocal teachers
coaches.
along the way, and there are muscular tricks to hitting notes that are just outside your normal range, a little lower than you would normally go and a little higher than you would normally go. There are techniques for that. I don't really
Let me ask you a question.
focus on technique.
This is very
focus on
interesting to
getting
me.
the story across.
What is the like? I know that there are some singers out there. One female, Cyndi Lauper, that comes to mind. Engelbert Humperdinck is another one comes to mind. They have like the most octaves. What's the most octaves that a singer can reach? Do you know? Is it like 4?
Oh wow! I'm happy if I am strongly hitting 2 octaves. That'll just give you a.
Well, what makes a
frame of
Cyndi
reference.
Lauper? What? That's just a gift. Or whenever I read about that, I'm shocked what these people can do. That's just
Well, there's 2 things that amaze me about singers. One is the range, and
Yeah.
one is the upper range. So you've got, bass, tenor are the 2, bass, tenor, baritone for men typically, and then for women you've got contralto, alto, soprano, and then above soprano you've got coloratura, which is what you hear on the, in the magic flute.
Oh wow! Okay.
The Mistress of the Night piece, the famous piece where the upper register is just beyond what you thought a human could ever do. So that's one aspect of singing that amazes me.
Mm-hmm.
The other aspect is the range. So my range is around 2 octaves,
Mm-hmm.
which is good enough
Mm-hmm.
for me. I'd love to expand that, but I've been told and I've read that Mariah Carey has a range of 4 octaves.
Yeah, that's why I've read that about Cyndi Lauper and Humperdinck too, but I don't know.
And
who
I
else
didn't
is-
know that about Cyndi Lauper or Humperdinck, but
Yeah.
I do know. I mean, Mariah Carey had such power and control in the coloratura range, but she could also get down into the, contralto.
What about
range.
now? Two that come to mind. One deceased, of course. Oh God, I forget her name. The great singer of her generation died at 51 in the bathtub. I'm losing my mind here. But also you have Barbara Streisand. What's her range? Do you know?
I don't know her range, but what amazes me about her is that she just decided that she was going to be a singer. And from what I read about her in the biographies, no one in her family has much, if any, at all, musical talent, and they certainly can't sing. She just put her mind to it and did it. And beautiful, beautiful voice. I also love Julie
Whitney
Andrews.
Houston.
I was very
Whitney
sad
Houston.
about her.
Whitney Houston is the one I forgot about. Boy, she could belt it. What's that called? What she can do? What Whitney Houston?
Oh, that's just straight out.
She just
straight
was
out
great.
gospel chops. I mean, she grew up in the church, and she was just blessed by God with that very special gift.
This is interesting stuff. Hey, you know what gets me annoyed? And just talking about voice sounds, and I'm sure it does others. Whenever one of these fly-by-night companies that sells male enhancement stuff, do these women that do the ads know they make a fool of themselves, or at least make men realize that we must be idiots? When she goes, "Hi, you need a male enhancement." Why did you get that insults my intelligence? Do you know that?
What would you rather she say, Bob?
Just sound like you. Just a normal female sexy voice that reads a commercial properly. And you say, "Hi, do you suffer from ED? We've got a wonderful solution for you that'll improve your love life," and blah, blah, blah. Rather than, "Hi, do you have a problem?"
Well, if I had to say that in that way, I feel like I need to put on a white lab coat with, stethoscope.
No, you don't have
around
to
my neck.
do it like you could still be sexy without sounding like you're on NPR. For God's
That's true.
sakes. Good, you don't need
Look,
to.
I just brought on board a marketing consultant, and I am very excited about it. I'm not even going to share his name because I don't want people to crash his phone and call him. But he's a really, really good guy, and he's going to help me with my branding and pull everything together. And I will tell him, hey, I got advice this morning to do those commercials. Can you check into how do I audition for those?
Well, you know what? You should audition, but then you'll have to sound like an idiot to get the job. "Hi, do you need ED stuff?" Instead of, "Hi, can't you just be upbeat and friendly and not sound like a $5 a day trickster from 42nd Street?"
Well,
But that's what some men want, I guess. That's what they want to
audition,
hear.
I'll ask the director that very question if I get on audition.
All right, one more time. Tell us about the articles you have coming out on WestchesterCountyPress.com, and tell us about where you're going to be appearing.
Bob, WestchesterCountyPost.com. I am actually doing a series of some really great stories on autism, folks on the autism spectrum, and the beautiful, interesting range of opportunities for education and work that are being created in the last few years to make sure that these folks really reach their human potential. There are some great places that offer special housing support and job training and educational support for folks on the spectrum. And I'm really looking into that whole world right now. It's a really interesting, not only with autism spectrum, but intellectual disabilities and physical disabilities for folks who may normally have traditionally found it difficult to get an education and find gainful employment. there are some really interesting trends happening out there. So that's gonna be coming up in the sports and wellness section in the next few days.
Okay. Well, listen, thank you very, very much. We're going to take a quick break. But Janelle, I love your voice just as it is. No affectations, please. Janelle Albritton, everyone. She is as good as it gets. We're just taking a quick break to take our breath. Now, we moved our 8:25 guests. We're actually moving them 8:35 to tomorrow. And we got a chance to talk with someone I can actually ask about the same topic and get his take. If you have small children at home, get them out because we're going to put them on camera in a moment. Hi, everybody. You're listening to Radio Westchester. I'm Bob Marrone. This is Mornings with Bob Marrone. We are the radio station at the train station. Now, for those of you who are frightened by Jake or me, you ain't seen nothing yet. And we're just kidding. One of our favorite callers and guests and a friend of this radio station. He's in the house, but first I want to remind you this hour, or this bottom of the hour, is brought to you by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, the top-rated campus of senior care. Visit uhgc.com. Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Payne & Con, Dominic's Fine Cigars, and plug-in virtual reality. Brace yourselves! Actually, please welcome to the broadcast Anthony Galetto, who stopped by to say hi, and we always welcome him. Hello, my friend. How are you?
Good morning. I just saw Lorraine and Bob on the platform.
Okay. They're out there. Yeah, I got to get a hold of them and get them on. Well, at least they're going to work. They're doing their thing.
I don't know where you want to go, but can I just make one quick comment?
Sure.
I was listening to you and Vince this morning.
Yes.
About the affordable housing situation in his community.
Yes.
And as your show went on, you made a comment about a president who breaks all the rules.
Well, in general, but
No. I'm not going to be very technical. No. Just a comment you made. Okay.
Right.
And I'm going to tell you why he got elected. Because what exists in his community right now, if left to the judge to decide, there would be eminent domain. And one of those well-to-do areas, people would lose their home values,
that's
lose
his point.
their home.
Yeah, I agree.
And this is why a president that breaks all the rules
was
needed.
Yes, I understand. And I don't know what the answer is because that kind of stuff. I'm sure you heard my monologue about all of a sudden now Woody Allen has no rights. Did you hear that?
Yeah,
that's absurd.
It's Bob, and you know that you talked about that fight with all the young girls that they beat up the girl.
Yeah.
That's the loony left. If they don't get their way, whatever ticks them off. Look at what Liz Warren had to say about the Bernie supporters.
I know. I'm not even going to argue. I'm not even going to debate you.
It is what it is.
Well, and that was Vince's point when he came on. That is why people, the left comes along and imposes things that are illogical and makes no sense.
And the worst part is, even when they get their way, they're not satisfied. If you remember the Westchester settlement here, I believe it was 750 units.
Yes.
Then, once it was agreed to, they bumped it up to 1,000. Yes. They moved the goalposts. And I would love to debate anybody on abortion, and I'll tell you why. While I don't believe in abortion, I am pro-choice.
Right.
Because choice begins before the act, not after. For both people. Okay? Now, being anti-abortion, I accepted Roe v. Wade as the law of the land. Okay? And it could have stayed that way for eternity as far as I was concerned. But now we go from first trimester to second trimester to live birth. This is the problem. They get an inch and they want a foot.
Slope.
A foot, they want a yard.
See, I've always felt with abortion, I went from being incredibly against it to reasonable about it. And what I've never been able to figure out, people will make mistakes. Maybe their birth control won't work or they got carried away or whatever. But if you can't make a decision in 3 months, and that's always where I've stood. But I understand why people don't agree with that.
Listen, I accept Roe v. Wade as a compromise.
Right.
For people who don't believe in abortion and people who do. But by the same token, let's be honest here. When you have the morning after pill and other things that you can take immediately before you even know if you're pregnant, there's really almost no need for it out. And there are
Well,
and
now
I'm going
you're
to take
just
away the
dealing with people
exceptions.
who are irresponsible.
I'm going to deal with the exceptions naturally of rape, incest, health
Right.
of the mother or child.
Don't be
I get
reasonable.
all of that. I
Don't
get all of
start
that,
now.
and I support that right through the 9th month. Okay, but I'm talking about the average person who wants an abortion. That's what I'm talking about. And the weird thing is yes, it's a woman's choice. It's her body, but she didn't get there alone. The male is cut out altogether, but yet has to be responsible if that same choice is made to go to term. So it's just
Well, that's one of those things of conventional wisdom that's probably going to die away soon, not in our lifetime anyway. I did want to ask you about something else, only because you grew up in close proximity to it, and a part of my monologue today. I'm still trying to figure out, and thank you for that, by the way, a very sensible approach, and thank you for your comments about it. Why is this stuff now happening with Mount Vernon after somebody died on the parapet? And again, it really bothers me. Injustice, as you probably can see, a thread that runs through me, even when I'm wrong about stuff, is when if I perceive an injustice, it drives me crazy. Now, Richard Thomas was no angel. He did what he did with his preparing for office, or campaign finance.
you got to have a caveat there,
Right.
Because many have done
No, I know.
just what
And
he's done.
I
and
knew you would
worse,
say that. I knew you would say
and
that.
he never made it past the Board of Elections,
Right.
and a little slap on the wrist.
That's
and a
number
fine.
one. Number two, even just the optics of going with Joe Spezio, whether you like Joe or not.
That was probably his biggest mistake.
And it made him a lot of enemies. His inability to make allies after he was elected.
But he had no chance to make allies.
No, I
In
understand.
fairness,
No,
in
but
fairness.
the reason I'm saying
if
this
you piss
is
off Reggie, you're done.
right. But that's what I'm saying. See, what I'm saying is, and the reason I go down this path is, I don't want to be accused of being ignorant that Richie had his faults.
Right.
But I remember all the way back in WFAS, before he even ran, railing about not being able to see the books, railing about how did Memorial Field get this way. He ran on those issues. He pursued these issues. And when he ran into what the current mayor is dealing with now, all hell broke loose. Second, you may remember when I used to have Lyndon Williams on 1,000,000 times. And he told us how he too begged the governor and begged this one and begged that one. And others did too. And now I give Journal News credit for writing the story, but the guy's already dead. And I must say, when I say dead, his career, I had sensed, and this is the first time I'm ever saying this, the zeitgeist, even among the press, had like a tiny little X on Richard Thomas. And I resented it because one of the things that happens, and I know the president talks about this too, so you got to be fair. Even without malice, the press sometimes develop, what do they call, groupthink?
Yeah, it's also called a blind eye.
Yeah, and they had an X on Richard early. And maybe because he used to come in here every week, I knew what to criticize, but I also, something was just wrong there.
Look, the African-American
People
community
didn't
in
like
Mount
him.
Vernon, they don't buck the powers that be publicly. They bucked them in the election when they handily elected Richard, but without them coming out publicly, Richard had no chance, zero chance of getting anything of any consequence to hold somebody. And we all know who we're talking about. It has to fall at the feet of Ernie Davis, accountable. Even if Ernie doesn't know, it still falls at his feet. And we know he does know because he made a comment, I remember a contractor doing something, we had a handshake, I don't remember.
It's just ridiculous. But anyway, and some people say, Bob, move on. No, we shouldn't move on from injustice. Not until justice is done. And now I'm not saying we got to give the guy his job back. Who knows? Maybe he'd be a terrible mayor if left to his devices, but he never got a chance to have his devices. I still remember the first time I visited City Hall after he got elected. And I said, where are your pencils? Where's your paper? And she won't let me order any.
Richard tried to use that to parlay his position too, and in that respect, it was kind of like self-defeating.
Mm-hmm.
He couldn't walk that fine line. He always had to have at least 1 foot over it, And when he got the second half of that other foot over it, where he gave them enough to do something.
Yeah.
And again, like I said, it wasn't on a parallel to what had happened in the past or the precedents that had been set. It was just enough for them to finish him off.
Yeah, and he was held to a different standard than
He
other
was
people
held
that
to
had
the
that
legal
job.
standard, which few before him were held
Well,
to.
that's very good. That's a really good analogy. My guest is Anthony Galetta, and he came in to say hi and comment about a couple of other things. In fact, you see the way you walked in here today? If someone walked in here from Mount Vernon and said, Bob, let me tell you how wrong you are, or how wrong-headed you are, or here's what I would welcome it. And I've just given up inviting them on. I mean, it's one thing I love about this city. Lord knows.
When you see someone like Damon tell you that the public's not, there's no public outcry.
Yeah, or AJ.
Or
Yeah.
AJ. You know, it is what it is. And that's what moves the needle when it comes to public officials. Not one person, even though they may have a following. When they see the masses come out, they don't see people, they see votes. They do the math.
By the way, you look good. That's why I put you on camera. Well, I mean, when I mean good compared to 2 weeks ago, I was saying
compared
the
to
mask you. No, but you look good. I see your neck brace is off.
Oh, it's in the car. I have to wear it when I drive.
Okay, it is
Yeah.
in the car.
Yeah.
How are you feeling otherwise?
We'll find out a little later. We'll take a few tests. That's why I'm down today. But yeah, it's, and you and I, we have same birthdays coming up. Mine.
No, I don't.
Yep,
No.
yep.
No.
Like I said, you're the Audubon speed, and I'm the upstate speed.
People are going to be searching their what's the Audubon speed? All right, 70's coming up. Okay, get over it, and you get out of
65.
here.
I'm 65.
Good luck at the
I'll be
doctors
65.
today, and thank you for coming in.
You
We
got
really
it.
appreciate it. That's Anthony Galetta. You know who the phone ringing was. He called right on time today, and I'm sorry if we frightened any children. You could let them back in. Hey, wait, come here, Anthony. Get out. We sprayed him with Lysol. All righty. We're sorry if we frightened any small children, but our next guest, a man who holds the governor accountable and does, we think, a very good job as the most, and I think it's fair to say, vocal of legislators in the Assembly. Please welcome Tom Abenante. Good morning, Mr. Assemblyman. How are you? Hello?
Good morning, Bob.
Who's this?
This is Rich Thomas.
Oh, Richard, you called in ahead. I thought it was the Assemblyman. Go ahead. If he calls, we'll have to throw you off. You heard what I had to say, I guess.
Hey, many thanks, and many thanks to Anthony. But I just want to emphasize, I never made it to the Board of Elections for my campaign finance to be reviewed, and I think that's the biggest due process
Yep.
damage. And I just want to emphasize that, because had I had a chance to get through the Board of Elections as every other elected, it would have been addressed the same way Chris Johnson's issue was addressed.
Now,
civilly.
let me ask you something. We forwarded you that the Lohud article. Did you get a chance to read it yet?
I did not get a chance to read it at length, but I agree with the headline, and I agree with the substance. The bottom line is it would have never happened or gone so far had it been another community, but it did happen. And the question is, what are we going to do about it? And my hope is, let's just clean the field and move on. I mean, Pelham started fixing their field adjacent to Target maybe about 5 months ago, and they're just about done.
Is
So
that the
it
one
just
in the
doesn't
back?
make sense.
Is that the one in the back of Target? Because I passed it the other day on the road, and I know you would.
Yes.
Okay, I know where that is.
Yes.
That's actually
There's just a-
Pelham's? I
On the
get
other side
so
of the Hudson River, that's Pelham's Park.
I get so
they pass through
confused.
Melbourne.
I get so confused in that area. But, look,
bo-
go ahead.
Bottom line is, I appreciate you guys talking about it. Nobody's perfect. I know I'm not perfect. I just ask to be treated equally and have access to due process, and I never had it. And the question is, why?
Well-
Had I gone through the same process going through the Board of Elections, guess what?
Well,
I'd still be married today.
As you know what, we continue to ask that question, Mayor Thomas, and we will continue to. Thanks very much for the buzz.
You got it.
All right, take care. Mayor Thomas wanted to comment. We should hear from Mr. Abenante. But if we don't, upcoming is Bob Cox. Now, as you know, Bob had been working on the Apex story for quite a while. And that is, Apex is the process through which scores, and if I understand it correctly, grades are accumulated, graduation rates processed, and so forth. And in many schools throughout New York City and elsewhere, that system has been played with to reflect results that are not there. Now, what we're going to do, since we haven't heard from Tom Abenante, we do want to go over a couple of other stories, and we will do that now. First, another look at the weather, which is something that we have to do contractually, even though you're looking out the window and you see the sunshine. That's because it's 52 degrees. It's getting up to near 70 today. Lots of sunshine. Again, officially 67, 68, but we say it'll kiss 70. You'll see. Tonight, partly cloudy. The temperature will be 45. Tuesday, cloudy with rain late in the day, but 62 degrees. We like that. Wednesday, still more sunshine, partly sunny, the high 55. And it'll actually get down to 40 at night, but we can handle that. And the weather's brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. And it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit UHGC.com. And of course, we're supported this morning by Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Payne & Con, Dominic's Fine Cigars, and Plug-in Virtual Reality. And again, as we wait for Mr. Abenante, although with everything going on, Lord knows how busy people are. Now, some schools got closed because of the coronavirus, and if you're just checking in with them, we're going to be sure you know. Scarsdale Public Schools will be closed through March 18th after a middle school faculty member tested positive for the virus. In Somers, where Anthony, our last guest, hails from, the Somers Central School District will be closed today after a parent of a Primrose Elementary School student tested positive for the disease. Now, the parent has not visited the school in recent weeks. The message said other family members, including the student, have tested negative for the virus. Another student, that is. The Westchester Torah Academy, the private Jewish day school in White Plains, is closed until March 16th, and they're following directions from the health department. One of their students has been exposed to someone who had the illness. The private Westchester Day School in Marrone will be closed until March 17th after a student tested positive for the coronavirus. And a Marrone parent of children at Chatsworth Avenue School and Marrone High School has confirmed the case of the coronavirus. Superintendent Robert Shaps said in an update the parent has not been on the school grounds and is self-quarantined. Now, one school is actually closed for the duration of the school year, and that is the KEIO, K-E-I-O Academy of New York in Purchase. They are closing for the remainder of the school over coronavirus concerns. And Annunciation School in Yonkers, hundreds of students there are staying home after more school districts in the county closed due to coronavirus. The Annunciation School is the latest school to shut down. A letter was sent home to parents informing them that a student at the school was in close proximity to a person who has a case of the coronavirus. This, according to the letter, both the person who tested positive for COVID-19 and the student are not showing any symptoms thus far. Now, county health department officials have asked the student to self-quarantine. And as you know, right now, the biggest spread is here in New Rochelle, and the governor noted that there are 82 cases in New York in general. Now, some schools have actually reopened. They took this weekend to massively scrub down the schools with disinfectant and so forth. Hastings on Hudson has now reopened after exposure concerns there. John F. Kennedy Elementary School in Portchester, which closed early Friday after a family member of two students was believed to have been in close contact. They are back in session as well. And the Primrose Elementary School will reopen tomorrow. We noted that earlier that they would be closed today. Now, the governor has declared a state of emergency. That's important for a number of reasons, resources and such, but it also is important because for those that are price gouging, here in Westchester and elsewhere, regarding things like what we showed you before, our hand sanitizer and so forth, they too are now liable and suspect to the law. Firefighters have been pulled back from virus calls in New York City. The FDNY is pulling firefighters from answering medical calls that describe symptoms associated with the coronavirus. They are sending out EMT people instead. And that's what we know so far about the virus as we move on. Mayor here in New Rochelle has noted, of course, that we are the epicenter of the virus here in New York State, and we know that. Bramson says he welcomes an emergency operations center that the state has set up locally for the coronavirus. He said, and we quote, New Rochelle, unfortunately, is the epicenter of the coronavirus in New York State, so it makes sense to make the staging area here. Again, as all of our public officials strive to reach balance. It is coming up on 9 o'clock. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, our regular Monday long-form guest is with us, Bob Cox, and he has what really amounts to a breaking story, an in-depth story now, some of the information that he foiled regarding the Apex issue has finally borne fruit, and we will be back with Bob in just a few moments. This is the one, the only Radio Westchester. I'm Bob Marrone. This is Mornings with Bob Marrone, broadcasting live on Facebook, Instagram, Periscope, also RadioWestchester.com, iTunes, iHeart, and if you go to the MyTuner Radio app and you click on Mornings with Bob Marrone, you can get us there. We'll be with you in a moment. Just a breather for you. Folks, once again, we turn a light on our subject. He is, of course, Bob Cox. Bob Cox is the managing editor and publisher of Talk of the Sound, considered the source since 2008. He's the man, one of the people that inspired what we do here. He does the honest, heavy lifting, the investigative reporting that other outlets can't or won't do. He's made quite an impact on this city, and he's likely to do it again with the latest story that he brings to us as we come up on 9:01. Please say good morning to Bob Cox. Good morning, Robert.
Good morning.
Sorry, I put the wrong button on. Good morning, Robert.
Good morning.
Now, you notified us last week, but we what's the right word? We embargoed the story until we could see you in person. It's your work, not our work. What is the latest with the Apex issue in our schools here in New Rochelle?
Well, to set the stage, folks may recall that 2018 and on May 7th, we broke a story about problems with a software program called Apex Learning and the abuse of that system by one particular individual, Shadi Alvarez, who was the Apex coordinator for Apex Learning. That is a credit recovery program. Also an online learning tool, but the primary use of it is that if a student fails a course, they can still earn credit by going through that course through Apex. So if you fail American history, you can take an American history module through Apex.
Now through Apex. So is it an online learning tool with programmed instruction, or does a teacher get on the other end? How does it work?
Well, there is online course material. It is managed through a teacher. Most of the work, most of the work is online, but doesn't necessarily have to be. And then the assessment, the quizzes and the tests, they are online. So examples of offline work you might do would be there's a phys ed class, and obviously you're not going to jump around.
I'm trying to figure out how I would do phys ed online, Robert.
Right, so you don't do that. And then also there's things like art classes where you draw stuff and then they're evaluated and the scores are recorded. But the vast majority of it is self-contained modules within the online, which is then assessed because you go in and answer some questions. And then once you've done the assessment, let's say that it's a class in American history and there's 8 parts. You get to part 1. You take the test on that section. If the teacher says you passed, the teacher can then unlock the second section, and you can then proceed through the second, the third, the fourth, as you demonstrate mastery.
Yes.
Okay.
But question, because a lot of people are probably wondering this. How do I know? Okay, now people can see, and they saw your son on the radio the other day. He may be doing some stuff for us soon. How do I know if he was taking an Apex course that you, with your life experience and degrees from the University of Chicago and Notre Dame, how do I know you're not doing it for him?
Well, the way that the assessments are done is they're done in a controlled environment, like at a testing center.
Oh, I see. So he's not at home, or she's not at home doing this.
Well, you're jumping ahead.
Okay, well, go ahead. All right. But that's why I asked the question.
You're asking two different questions.
Well, you'll get to it. You'll get to it.
How is the system set up to be used? What are the procedures and protocols? And what ended up actually happening? So after my story on May 7th, I was approached about another story related to that, which had to do with a bunch of material that had been obtained that showed that a student apparently several students hadn't done very good work and gotten full credit anyway. And then I had a third story that art department teachers complained that a kid got a credit through Apex, even though the teacher who was assigned to it was not certified as an art teacher. So those are the three things that happened. The reaction to that was, we're going to do an investigation, and they will release all of it, be fully unredacted. And ultimately, by the end of 2018, the board released the unredacted report. I had actually obtained a copy of it in advance, and I released it, basically forcing their hand to release it. I released it the day before. But also I had foiled for all of the invoices from the company that did it, which were also very instructive because that showed each day who they had interviewed and where they had gone and other work that the investigator had done. So at least they were transparent. Okay. The actual investigation was a bit of a whitewash. Rather than
Who conducted it?
A company called T&M Protection Resources, which was hired by Bond, Schoeneck and King, which is the law firm the district had at the time that they had for decades. It's a long story, but with Jeff Kale, Sarah Richmond, former board president. But the board, in theory, hired their law firm to then hire T&M. But in fact, they didn't really do all the paperwork correctly, so it ended up that basically the district hired T&M. But that allowed me to get access to some of the records. And anyway, it was a whitewash because the program had been going on for 4 years. And there had been 7 Apex coordinators during those 7 years. And in order to get classes approved, you needed the principal, the guidance counselor for every house. House teachers, house principals had to be involved. So the idea that they looked at one person for 10 months rather than 7 people for 4 years was the whitewash. Okay. So it came out that they found that there was 212 what they call overrides, where they just pop in a grade into the computer system. An administrator does that. But they couldn't really determine much else in terms of the other complaints. So the only charges that were actually sustained in the investigation were the ones I had made originally about the different forms of abuse. Like, for example, kids were able to take the tests in insecure environments. The systems were not locked properly, so people could advance through the system. There's a whole bunch. Teachers were not actually teaching the classes. Basically, it was not being done the way the protocol described as originally set up. So the number that came out of that was the 212, okay? And a lot of people were shocked by that number, right? That there 212 times somebody had gone into the system and deliberately changed students' grades or given grades to students for material they had never been assessed on. In some cases, that the kid appeared not to even have taken the course, okay? So this was all about pushing some kids through the system, giving them a diploma, increasing the graduation rate to make the superintendent and the high school principal and everybody else involved, the board, to look good, to say, hey, we're improving the graduation rate, which was a stated goal of the administration.
No, just back up just 1 second.
Hold on.
This 212, no, bear with me, just for my sake, my tiny brain. 212, were these all seniors?
It didn't break it down.
Okay.
It didn't break it down.
But it facilitated moving them along, for sure.
Well, you need 22 credits to graduate from high school.
Okay.
So let's assume that kids weren't doing this extra work to get their 25th credit.
Gotcha.
Okay, they were getting it because they needed a credit or two to to actually get over the hump and be able to graduate. So all we do know is, well, we don't know it from the original report. We now have more information. So again, jumping ahead a little
All
bit.
right, go ahead. That's okay.
So in any case, there's this report. It's very problematic. And at the time, I wrote an article because they scapegoated Shadi Alvarez. Now, this is a woman we should never have hired. Okay, she came
In the
to
first
us.
place.
She came to us from New York City. She had as bad a track record as you can have. Okay, she'd been written up in the New York Post. They found that she had been, there was two separate investigations in New York City schools that found in one case there was $100,000 worth of credit card expenses that she had made that were unexplained. Another case where she was found to have been falsifying timesheets to show that she was working at times that school was closed, but all about maybe, alleged to basically sustain charges, and that's the term they use in New York City schools. All these charges were sustained. In addition, there was an outside audit that was unrelated to this by an accounting firm. They also found irregularities. So this is a person we should have never hired, but we did, okay, because she was connected to the then principal, Reggie Richardson, and he brought her in. And she was the one who ultimately was put in charge of Apex over the last 2 years of the program. And this is where most of the damage was done. Not all, but most. And so the report came out and basically laid it all at her feet, and she was fired. And there was a whole big public hoopla at the time. And I wrote an article and I said, why Shadi Alvarez? Because the idea that little Shadi Alvarez sat down one day and came up with this big conspiracy to do all this work, to falsify graduation rates and to change things, and that nobody else knew about it, is absurd, because there's all sorts of sign-offs. And the idea that somebody like her would come up with this whole plan to do this, she was a house principal, okay? So you have all these people above her. You have a principal. You have a chief academic officer in the cabinet. You have the superintendent. You have the board.
What is a house principal? I've heard that term many times.
Well, the high school is divided up into 4 sections of roughly 700 kids. And so to make the school feel a little smaller, they break them up into those 4
like
groups.
vice principals almost?
They're not. There is an assistant principal at the high school. No, it's below that. I would say that primarily they get involved with discipline issues and things like that. The use of the word house principal is misleading. It's not like a real.
Is it like a dean in college, or even less than that?
A dean of college runs a whole college.
No, there's a position that reports to the dean.
No, it's a step above a teacher.
Okay.
Okay, it's not anything grand. Okay, but in any case, so she got scapegoated. She got fired. Now, when the report was released in December 2018, the public was told specifically, this investigation is over. This is the full and complete report, and we're giving it to you completely unredacted. Within a matter of weeks, they had reopened the investigation, but this time they kept it secret.
Okay, hold that thought. I want to remind people that voice you hear is that of Bob Cox. He's the managing editor and the publisher of Talk of the Sound, considered the source since 2008. Long reporting on the New Rochelle School District, the schools, the high schools, etc. We're talking about the results of his work uncovering the facts about the Apex issue. Continue, please.
So they secretly moved the investigation forward. I only know this because I made additional FOIL requests where I obtained hundreds and hundreds of emails from the state of New York, which was conducting its own investigation. That's the Office of Professional Responsibilities and within the New York State Department of Education, coordinated through Southern Westchester BOCES. So I got all of the records between the district, BOCES, and the state. And from that, I learned, and this was back in the fall of 2019. So from January to September, dead silence. Never disclosed that anything was happening with Apex. The reason it came up is I went to the board president in September and I said, okay, well, you're the new president, so I want to ask you what's happening with the state investigation. You said in December you turned everything over to the state. What's happening with that? We haven't heard a word about it. Her answer was, I don't know anything about a state investigation. I do know that we reopened the Apex investigation, and we're expecting a report. So my answer was twofold. One, what do you mean you don't know about the state investigation? You were sitting there when the referral was made to the state. And second is, what do you mean they reopened the Apex investigation? At that point, she went, radio silent. I saw her many times, but she would not talk about that. I called her on December 4th, the 1-year anniversary of the original release of the report. And at that point, she said, we just got it today. And I said, well, you're going to release it? And she said, no. I want the board to review it in executive session in 2 weeks, and then we'll make a decision as a board. Now, that completely contradicts what she had done just the year before. She had been at a public meeting in October when Apex was front burner, and she announced to the board at a public meeting, the board may not be aware, but we, meaning her and Jeffrey Hasty, the then president, she was vice president, had just received the Apex report. This was around October 19th, 2018. And we're going to release it fully unredacted to the public as soon as we can, probably within 2 weeks. That didn't happen. It was more like 3 months, and then I released it. But she didn't say anything about consulting the board, having an executive session review. She announced that she and Jeffrey had decided to release it, right, as they had said, fully unredacted as soon as possible. Now she's saying something completely different. Now we have to go through the executive session of the board, and they're going to review it, and the whole board's going to decide. Well, that was December 4th. Month after month after month, I'm not getting anything, and I'm going into them over and over again saying, where is it? I get two different answers. One is, it's a public record, but we had to have it redacted, so it's taking a while to redact it.
Redacted for what purpose?
Why do they redact anything, Bob?
Well, there's to hide the truth, and then there's supposedly for personnel issues.
Okay. It's not the way it works, okay?
Well, that's what I want you to tell us how it works.
Well, the government can redact under certain conditions. They can black out information for a variety of reasons. There's a whole bunch of exceptions. I'm not going to list them all here, but there's a bunch that they're legally entitled to do.
Okay.
That's not the point. The point is, on the one hand, they said it's a public record, but we have to redact it. I asked Dr. Fea about it directly at a board meeting in early January, and her response by the end of January was, it's not a public record yet because the board has not finished reviewing the document in executive session. That's absurd. I also went to the New York State Committee on Open Government for backup on this, and they confirmed it and sent me some past cases. The government body is free to review any document in executive session until the cows come home. It doesn't make the document more or less a public record. It was a public record the day it was received. It was a final report, okay, paid for by the district, and the public has a right to have it.
Although, as you've stated, they have a right to redact.
Well, again, you're sort of conflating things, and I can see in your mind that you're conflating things, but I'm just trying to explain to you that the important point here is that the superintendent is saying it's not a public record.
Right.
And the administrator in charge of records is saying it is a public record. Okay. Now, it is a public record. So they were basically lying for months about trying to claim that it wasn't a public record because the board was reviewing an executive session.
Okay.
That has nothing to do with it. They were just simply stonewalling, is my point. Okay?
Go ahead.
Now, ultimately, they could redact the entire thing, and that's why I think you're conflating things. Okay. They could redact the entire document. If you go look for certain people's FBI files, you'll just get a bunch of black pages. Okay, that's what happens. So it can't be both. Okay, I then filed an appeal, which you can do, to the head of agency, which is the superintendent, for what they call constructive denial of my request. In other words, you're not giving me the document, and I'm entitled to it, and so not giving it to me is in effect denying it to me. And I was entitled to a response within 10 days. I didn't get it, so I went to the board meeting last week, complained about it publicly, and the next day I got two documents. Basically, they call Apex 1 and Apex 2, which is not to be confused with Apex 2018, the original report. This was done by a woman named Regina Caffarella, who is an attorney for Douglas A. Spencer law firm, a law firm out in Long Island. So the document I got there, the two, about 90% redacted. Okay. Now I've already done an analysis that indicates that they improperly redacted sections of this document, which I'll have to file an appeal for, but I'll explain that in a future article, and we can talk about that some other time. I also got a few weeks ago the invoices from Douglas A. Spencer Law Firm so I could see who they were interviewing and what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
Those were completely blacked out. No information. Just all you got was the date, the amount of hours worked, and the amount charged. But nothing about what they were actually doing. Now that contradicts every other invoice for law firms I've ever gotten from the district. So I have an appeal for that coming too, because on past practice, like when I went for the T&M invoices, it said everything. Every page was unredacted. There was one name that was redacted. It was the name of a parent, which they're perfectly free to redact.
Mm-hmm.
But 99% of it was unredacted. I also filed for the law firm, Bonchonic and King's invoices. Got all that unredacted. Okay? But now all of a sudden, and they have a new law firm, they're redacting almost everything. So that's troubling in and of itself. What's more troubling is when I finally did get the report, it's got a cover sheet. And the date on it wasn't December 4th. It was October 3rd. So in fact, they had the report for 2 months when the board president was not responding to me as to where is it. And what she said on December 4th wasn't true. They didn't just get it that day. They had already had it for 2 months, which means that they've had this document for 5 months.
Mm-hmm.
And they just released it the other day, and they released it 90% redacted.
See, the problem that I have as a layman at these kinds of things is, what's the point of releasing a document that's 90% redacted when you've claimed to be transparent? And it befuddles me. Now, have you at any point in time seen an unredacted copy?
No, but I will tell you this. I probably will at some point,
Mm-hmm.
not from them.
Mm-hmm.
And God help them if it turns out that there's a number of redacted sections that were unwarranted and legally unjustifiable, because I will go after them on that too.
Because as you noted earlier, you know what the rules that require what can be redacted are knowable. And they're
Well, I'm
listed.
going to go back to something that happened a couple of years ago. The board president at the time, Jeffrey Hasty, I actually got a copy because I was on the committee at the time, but there was a security assessment done by a company in 2018 called Guidepost Solutions. Mr. Hasty, because he's an idiot, managed to upload an unredacted copy to Facebook, which a reporter from the Journal News obtained. She held on to it, and then she waited for the redacted report to come out, and then she ran a story comparing the two and found massive inconsistencies.
Mm-hmm.
She confronted the board about it, and a couple weeks later, Jeffrey Hasty, then board president, told the Journal News, we went through it line by line, meaning himself and I believe Amy Moselli, who was vice president, now president. We went through it line by line and we concurred there were sections that should not have been redacted. So we will be releasing a less redacted version of the report.
Mm-hmm.
But they never did. I asked for it as recently 3 months ago. Still don't have it. This has been a year and a half with this.
Do you know what puzzles me? Once again, my guest, Bob Cox, the managing editor and publisher of Talk of the Sound, considered the source since 2008. We're talking about the Apex report, which now released 90% redacted, according to our guest. What troubles me is just the logic of, we have a new administration. We have a new superintendent. It would be customary, it seems to me, to throw a previous administration under the bus. Why hide whatever's in there now?
Well, I can't answer that question because I got the report Wednesday. They knew they were giving it to me. I asked the board president twice now for comment. I went to their PR guy, Ken Valenti, who you know, asked him to get a comment for me. I went directly to the superintendent, which is usually my least preferred option because I don't want to bother her. Dead silence. Now, they knew I was getting the report, and they knew what was in the report. So let's go to that. So what was the 10%, right, that we could see? Well, what we get out of that, the headline is that there was 281 students who got fake diplomas. That's what that report says.
281.
Yeah. 281
Over what
kids.
period of time?
Well, from the entire run of the program, 2014 to 2018, started in August of 2014. But the program was actually very small in the first 2 years. So in the first 2 years, there may have been 36 students who actually were using the Apex course for credit recovery. That's when it was under the the auspices of the woman who created it, which is Diane Massimo, who I know and is assistant superintendent at the time in charge of curriculum, in charge of the high school. They took that program away from her, and it went to Dr. Magda Parvey, who was the chief academic officer, assistant superintendent, who ultimately became interim superintendent, Brian Osborne, and Reggie Richardson, and Shadi Alvarez. Then you see a massive increase. So not, like 10 students, 20 students, like 675 students the next year. Just massive increase. So you then also see far more overrides, okay? You also see in this report, okay, unlike the last report, and I should back up and say, the original report says that the investigators never got the Apex data.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? Well, because when the investigation started around Memorial Day weekend 2018, at the same time the Journal news story was coming out, there's a communication where the high school staff is discussing that they are going to now terminate Apex. And by the end of June, they had actually terminated it. So that when the investigators went in to go into the system, they couldn't get access because New Rochelle no longer had an account.
Right.
So they didn't bother to persist and demand the data from Apex, or were not given the time to do that. They just didn't do it. The T&M also put on an invoice that they interviewed the registrar, who I interviewed, Barbara Hastert. She's now retired. And that they billed the district for that. She told me that they never interviewed her. They only called her to find out if they could get access to the registrar records, which is the transcripts where everything goes to get on the diploma. But they never came by. They never obtained the records. So they didn't get any of the registrar information. They didn't get any information from Apex, which raises a question, what were you investigating? You couldn't be investigating anything. Now, to her credit, and I actually wrote Regina Caffarella unsolicited emails saying, thank you, okay, for being so diligent. This seems, based on the 10% I can see, that you were very persistent in pursuing this information. And there's a whole section in there, which I didn't get into in my article, but you can read it in the report, because I did post the reports. And people can see how heavily redacted they are. They're in the article, which is on Talk of the Sound. There's a running battle that she has trying to get information from Apex. It's similar to what the state investigators went through. They had a running battle to get the information from Apex. But in her case, she actually triple checked the data she was getting, and she found out that the data she was originally sent was wrong and had a lot of errors and missing pieces. She went back to them. They said, oh, yeah, that's because of reason X. We'll work on that, and we'll get you the corrected data. They'd send her more data. She'd go back to them. Still not correct. You can still see this problem, that problem. Okay, yeah, we're going to fix that. We're going to escalate it. You send her more data. That's wrong, too. All through her investigation, she's trying to get full sets of data. She cannot get it. So that when the investigation ends, okay, so her last words in the report are, still don't have the information from Apex that I need. Still don't have high confidence in the accuracy of the information. But what she was getting was things like when a course was opened and closed, like when a student started and finished a class, and then how much time they spent on the class. So these classes are designed to be like a equivalent of a semester, so they should have many, many hours of work. There was 54 cases where time spent on the class was 0. 15 of those were 0, and the opening and closing date of the class was the same day. So somebody, an adult, went into the system, created a course for a particular student, gave him credit for the course, closed it out, and left. Kid never took the class. Any kid who got those credits shouldn't have graduated.
Nope.
Okay? It gets worse than that, though, because we looked at the overrides with Shadi Alvarez, and there was 212. So
yeah, I got that number here.
Well, I have it too. I wrote the article, but I don't remember off the
No,
top of my
you-
head. I want to be accurate.
Well, you
but
said it was 212. I got it from earlier.
this report says it was 982.
Whoa.
So that's a 500% increase of what was originally reported. 982 grade changes. Most of those grade changes are actually just entering grades where there was nothing there. As a result,
Bob, that's an incredible number. We need to just stop and put that under a mic. 981 times
Two.
people went in here. Thank you.
982.
People went in and doctored a grade. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, and in fact, it explains in the report. Again, I thought that Regina Caffarella did a really good job because she explained. I'd love to see the whole report because I think it would just really be useful. But she explains that Apex told her it's not like you just sort of make a typo. You have to deliberately go into a special part of the program, bring up that particular course for that particular student, and go through a series of steps, and then make the change and press save.
Do you
It's like a
realize this had to
six-step
be more than
process.
a handful of teachers to have that many inputs, in my view?
Well, no, mostly it was being done by the administrators. And mostly it was being done in the last 2 years, mostly, but not exclusively, by Shadi Alvarez. So there was one day that in particular was really bad. That was June 21st, 2017, where many, many, many changes took place. Many, many examples of opening and closing a course the same day, having 0 time spent. And it was June 21st. Graduation that year was June 22nd. So she sat down the day before graduation. She started punching in grades for courses that kids never took to get them credits so they could graduate. Okay. So that's really bad because those are all cases where it looks like the kids didn't actually get proper credit.
Right.
And that was the kind of the topic with the original Apex. But 212 versus 982. Then there's another thing they measure, which is how many courses did these particular kids complete.
Yeah, that comes to mind.
489. So if there's it's probably each kid is taking 1 to 3 courses. The average is around 2. Okay. But that is deck chairs on the Titanic. I thought that was the important number. That's the number that jumps out at you. But that's not the significance of what this report says. What this report says is that the entire program, from inception to termination, did not meet state ed requirements. None of the classes were valid.
Now, did the state investigation conclude this as well?
We don't know because the state never released a report. I've asked the district, I've asked BOCES, and I've asked the state. I've got FOILs pending with the state. It's been many, many, many months waiting for an answer to this. Not even no, you can't have the report. Just radio silence as to what's happening with that report.
We're just going to take a quick break.
Okay, let's take a break. But
Wow.
when we come back, I can tell you that we can get into more details as to the fundamental
we
problems.
want that very much, but let him wait. We got to do one more weather report. Quite a revelation going on here. This is Radio Westchester. It is 8:32, and we need to take a look at the weather. The weather, of course, is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.org. 52 degrees, scattered clouds, lots of sunshine today. It's breezy. The temperature will be 67 officially. I dare say it will kiss 70. Tonight, partly cloudy, dropping down to 45. And on into Tuesday, cloudy with some rain late in the day, sadly, but 62 degrees, maybe up to 65. Always you can add 2 or 3 to this report. And on Wednesday, partly sunny. The high will be 55 degrees. As we head to the bottom of the hour with Bob Cox, we remind you that we're supported this morning by PluginVirtualReality.com, Dominic's Fine Cigars, the law firm of Payne & Con, and Aging Issues Management. And we do return to our conversation with Bob Cox, and we're talking about the revelations of his hard work regarding the Apex report. Bob, just a reaction. You mentioned earlier that Ms. Alvarez was made the scapegoat. True enough, but boy, she is very involved in this if she's the one doing the input. But the question is, who requested the input be done? Continue, please.
So I'll start off by reading a couple of paragraphs from the article I published the other day. And then this will kind of set the stage. So as I mentioned, deck chairs on the foundational.
I like the deck chairs. I like that line.
The foundational failure of the entire program makes previously reported efforts to manufacture or inflate grades and boost graduation rates look like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. As school administrators attempted to cheat on test scores for ineligible students improperly registered for invalid courses. I'll read that again. Cheating on test scores for ineligible students improperly registered for invalid courses. It's everything. So the high school credit recovery program did not include, this is the district's own investigator, did not include required certified teacher involvement with students enrolled in Apex credit recovery course offerings during the period 2014 through 2018. And by the way, that means the complaints of the art teachers, that there was a teacher who was not certified in art teaching a class.
That complaint is
that's
valid.
sustained.
Yeah.
Now, they don't say it. I don't see it in the report, but that's sustained because at the time, Apex said, no, there's no requirement that it has to be a certified teacher. Well, bollocks on that. That's not true. Okay?
Bollocks, that's a British term. I like that. Go ahead.
Well, I'm Irish.
It's been
the approval process for student participation in the program was not compliant with commissioner's regulations. The decision to grant credit to students who completed just 65% of a course was deemed not consistent with commissioner's regulations. So think about that. And it says it blames the cabinet. That's Brian Osborne, okay, at the time. They sat down and said, if a kid completes 65% of the course, not passes 65% of the material, just goes through 65, that's considered passing.
That's
regardless
absurd.
Of course it's absurd. By that criteria, all the kids at the high school could leave now who wanted to and pass every course because they're more than
65% through the school year.
March, right? Among the other findings,
I get that job.
Apex.
Wait, Bob, we have to go. No, we're not 65% through this
done.
interview
Show's
yet.
over.
Go ahead.
I'd like to see the Yankees walk out of the stadium. Well, we're winning.
It's the sixth inning. We're out of here.
We're out. Done. Apex tests were not administered in a manner that preserved the security of tests or academic integrity. Students were enrolled in credit recovery courses without prior failed attempts at such coursework as required. Think about that. You're getting credit recovery. Like, since you did the course and you didn't get a passing grade, you didn't get credit, but we'll give you credit recovery. This is saying that the kids never even took the course. So it's not credit recovery. It's just giving kids credit for courses they never took. But we also find out that there's a bunch of other things that they shouldn't have gotten credit at all. So they had issues with students
very upsetting.
Enrolled in the same class sections as students from prior school years. Students enrolled in the same class sections as students from other houses, which shouldn't happen. Students were enrolled in the same course twice, which shouldn't happen. Students began coursework in one school year and completed the coursework the following year. In some cases, the courses change year to year, so you can't. It's apples and oranges. There was incorrect information in the data as to who the teacher of record was.
If I take it 2 times, does that mean I failed the first or I just got credit twice?
Well, you're jumping ahead. I'm going to give you that too.
I'm going to
In what should have been a large red flag, no failing grades or unsuccessful attempts were documented for any of the Apex credit
Go
recovery.
back. Say that again. Nobody failed.
No failing grades, or unsuccessful attempts documented for any Apex credit recovery courses offered.
So in other words, once I went into Apex, I was home free. Whether I didn't take the course, whether I only sat there for 65% of the time, or if some administrator was nice to me.
Well, yeah. And what they did instead was they just, designated the classes.
This does not help our kids one little bit.
Well, like I said, it's not just that there's 281 students who got invalid credits that allowed them to graduate. It's actually that every credit in the program was invalid for 4 years. It's really not about Shadi Alvarez. She was cheating on a system that was fundamentally cheating. Okay, because the kids were not actually learning what they were supposed to learn. Now, there may have been some original good intent. You could argue that maybe somebody got some bad advice when they first started the program. It was used relatively lightly. Okay, when it first started, the first 2 years, you're talking a few dozen students. Somebody saw a hole and decided to drive a Mack truck through it.
Okay, let's back up for we with tiny brains. Let's put ourselves, and not for the sake of making her a scapegoat, in Alvarez's shoes. Why, presumably, is she doing this? What kind of authority does she have? Is she working unilaterally?
Well, we can go to her own statement.
Yes.
She
which
made a
is-
statement at a subsequent board meeting after the board decided to fire her. She showed up at 2 board meetings.
Right.
One of them, she showed up with her attorney. They said that they had documentation showed she was ordered to do this
By whom?
by Reggie Richardson, the principal. She says that she was ordered. I didn't see the document. She said she was going to sue. Maybe we'll see the documents at some point. But she asserted publicly, and it's on tape, that she was simply doing what she was told by her boss. Her lawyer said she would have been subject to discipline for insubordination if she didn't do what she was told. Now,
All right.
I also think the idea that Reggie Richardson alone did this, and what's interesting is, so there's very little in the report that I saw. Remember, it's 90% redacted. People can go see it for themselves. If you can see through black ink, let me know. I couldn't. I tried doing a lot of tricks
I bet you did.
to get it to open up, and I couldn't get it to open up. But so very few names are mentioned or even alluded to, not even by title. Okay. On the 65% class completion thing, that's one of the few times that I saw that it actually referenced anybody. Because it says this was decided by the cabinet. Now the cabinet,
That's the cabinet is the superintendent and all, right?
it's the superintendent and the assistant superintendents. So the cabinet is 4 or 5 people. Now the cabinet is not a high school principal or any other principal. It's not a department head. So it's not Shadi Alvarez. It's not Brian.
It's the highest.
Well, the people that would be in that cabinet meeting would have been the head of HR, Joe Williams, who's no longer there. Jeff White, this business official, no longer there. Neither of them have anything to do with curriculum. They don't do curriculum. That leaves Magda Parvey and Brian Osborne. Now, Magda Parvey, pleasant enough person, but not likely the person to be driving any activity for anything about anything. But kind of a wallflower. Okay. Brian Osborne, on the other hand, very different. He was trying to lay the predicate for his next job. And one way to do that, I believe, is that he saw,
graduation rate.
I'm going to boost, not only am I going to boost graduation rates, but I'm going to also cause the achievement gap to close, meaning the graduation rates between black, white, and Hispanic will become uniform. And they largely did that. And we now know how. They faked it. And I think that that's a problem, and that's why I asked the U.S. Department of Justice to take a look at this, because a lot of students were harmed, and there was direct benefits to people, or an attempt to have direct benefits to people like Brian Osborne and Reggie Richardson. Shadi Alvarez was paid $5,000 a year to do this, which is a lot of money when you're being paid $120,000 for your job.
To begin with.
Okay, and what are you being paid $5,000 to do? Cheat. Okay, so
Now,
I think that there. So I did ask the feds to take a look.
And
Well, they don't tell you the answer. I just send it to them, like I've sent them Mauro Zanzini, and I sent them John Gallagher, and I sent the girl in the wheelchair, and they got convictions on all 3. So to that extent, at least, I hope I have some measure of credibility with the U.S. Department
generally
of Justice.
speaking, when you hand over a case like this to them, what is the time frame between your handing it over and them taking action, or at least you seeing that action?
Well, the way I see an action is only if they
Right,
bring
if there's an
indictment.
indictment. Right, but generally, what's the...
Well, in the case of the
Yeah.
wheelchair, it was very rapid turnaround. It was within months. And in the case of Gallagher and Zanzini, it took years. So you just don't know. As they say, the wheels of justice grind slowly,
Grinds,
but
and
they
do
grind fine.
slowly. But one of the things
You never know.
that I'm thinking about, my favorite play, perhaps John Anulia's Beckett, there's the famous line, will no one rid me of this meddlesome priest, and whether or not that's a directive. Do you think a man like Osborne, if indeed he was behind this, or anyone in that position, do you think he says, geez, I wish the grades were better? Or does he say, make this happen? Of course, you don't know that. But it's somewhere along the line, someone interprets it as that. Otherwise, this wouldn't happen. Or they get a direct order. But to take us to Everest to Chance, to use the old baseball analogy, you're going in, if I heard you right, from Osborne to Parvey to this woman who testified.
Well, Bob, the only way we're really going to know any of that is if these people are required to testify under oath.
And that's where the law comes in.
That's where the Department of Justice would come in. I will add that in the state records that I obtained, In January 2019, it says that the Westchester County District Attorney's Office asked to be read into the investigation. So I don't know what they're doing. In the meantime, there was an investigation by the Orange County DA into Newburgh. I went up there. I went to their press conference. I met the DA. I met his staff, the people who actually did the investigation. And I've talked to people in Newburgh. They had a very similar situation. And from what I understand, there's been a number of other instances, around the country with Apex and with other companies. There was a very famous case in Washington that NPR wrote about and talked about on their air. They did it with a local media outlet. So there's been and it doesn't have to be Apex, right? I mean, if you have a photocopier, you can use it to photocopy homework or the Unabomber manifesto. I mean, take your pick. It's just a copier.
The Unabomber manifesto sounds a little more interesting.
Well, but it's a copier is a copier. The software is the software. It can be used and abused or not. I don't like the fact that they weren't forthcoming with the data, but I don't know that the software itself is the problem, but I think that the software is not designed to prevent the kind of irregularities, right? So, for example, if there's an inordinate number of courses that are open and closed in the same day and that they're having zero time spent and you're having hundreds and hundreds and hundreds.
It's very easy to build in parameters in any system
well,
to kick out an
somehow
exception.
there has to be a way that gets reported outside the food chain. I don't know how you do that, but they know.
Yeah, they
because
know.
they have the algorithms.
Believe me, it's
they
right.
know that
it's
there's
relatively
something...
easy to do. On Wall Street, we used to put tolerances in every different price change, a percentage of a price change beyond a certain point.
Well, the SEC does it.
Yeah.
That's how they catch people doing insider
Yes,
trading. They look for irregularities in the movement of the stocks.
It's easy to do.
So Apex has this information. They know when people are probably cheating, or at least that it should be flagged for investigation. The problem is, who do they take that to? I think maybe we need a law. I'll talk to Senator Schumer or Senator Gillibrand about this, but maybe Elliot Engel, that we need a law that says that these companies have to be licensed by the federal government and they have to report on certain parameters when there's anomalies. One
wonders, and this may be outside
the federal
the box.
is appropriate because most of this is happening across state lines.
Well, yes. The thing that occurs to me is one wonders if this is a process that is intended to be a workaround. In other words, schools wanting to improve graduation rates, this is the way you do it, and you hide behind Apex.
Well, you shouldn't be able to hide behind Apex.
Yes.
I'll tell you why. Because the state requires that the teachers still teach the course.
Right.
So using Apex is not actually going to save you that kind of money, because the big money in any school district is the personnel.
Well, one of the notes I wrote
So,
here
by the way, they got cost savings because they didn't have teachers actually doing this.
Well, that was a note I wrote here.
But you're not allowed to do that.
They didn't have teachers do it. So right away they went around the system. They didn't have real certified teachers doing this.
Well, I would say that they violated New York State regulations. That's not going around the system. That's actually working within the system and just cheating.
Yeah, well, I think I was saying the same thing, perhaps not as eloquently. Where do you go from here with this? What are the next steps?
Well, the first thing I want is some kind of statement from the school district about the fact of what this report said, and I also want an explanation as to why they're withholding so much of the information from the public. Think about this. They've known about all the stuff we just talked about for
since
5
October.
months and have said nothing. Not even, we got the report, but we can't talk about it for whatever reason, or we can't give a reason. But what they've done instead is chosen absolute silence.
But knowing you as I do and working with you over these years, don't they know that sooner or later you're going to come up with the unredacted report? Don't they realize that?
You would think that they would. I'm gonna.
Or they hope, or they hoping that it'll just
I generally
die down,
do.
That you move on to something else. Plus, you've got the state may come after them, the feds may come after them, the DA may come after them.
I've been on this for 2 years, so I'm not going away. And anybody who knows me knows I'm like a dog with a bone. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to keep banging away. Okay, as one school official said the other day inadvertently, "Oh, it's Cox being Cox."
Yeah.
And I said, well, I can't help being Cox because that's who I am.
Yeah,
and what that means is that I keep track of this stuff, and I may put it away for a while, but eventually I'm going to pull it back out. So if I didn't ask you the question Monday or Tuesday, I may ask you next month. I may ask you 6 months from now. And the other thing I will do is be very, very, very patient. That's why I say I expect at some point I'll ultimately get these documents. Mm-hmm. But I think what's going on here with the redactions and so forth is different. Okay, they got a new law firm, and they have totally changed their approach to what they're providing under FOIL. So I mentioned that in this particular case, they stonewalled me, but I'm going to have another article that highlights all the other foils. I just got a fill for a foil a few days ago that I made 7 months ago. A foil is supposed to be provided within that day, or you have 5 days to request additional 20 days. So in theory, if I make a foil today, I get it today. If I foil the New Rochelle Police Department about a criminal matter, I usually get the report the same day. Okay, because they can do that. If they can't, in 5 days, within 5 days, they have to say, we need more time, we need 20 days. After 20 days, they can ask for more time, but they have to give a date certain when they're going to produce the record. So you wait the 20 days and they say, well, we're going to get it to you by April 15th. They're not doing that either. So they're just dragging it on, and it's most of my foil requests now. So I don't know what's exactly going on here, but I just know that I give them to the person who's new, Assistant Superintendent Greg Kern. Some of my initial requests I actually got fairly quickly when he first started, but that's ground to a halt. And when I do get the documents, like the invoices,
They're
like
redacted.
beyond absurdity redacted. And I'll give you a case in point to preview an article I have coming, which is going to be part of my appeal. So there's a section in the report that says, so what was this lawyer hired to do? So there's an engagement letter when they first hired this person, right, back in early 2019. I foiled for that, right? And in the original investigation, T&M, I got the whole document. This, it said scope of representation, blank. So it's like, you're not going to even tell me why this person was hired. So I appealed that. Okay. I also appealed the blacked out invoices. Back in February, the superintendent came back and said, I'm granting your appeal in part. We're going to unredact the scope of representation part. So I got a copy of that document.
And
it said that the lawyer has been hired to do some things that the board will decide to do.
it's like an open retainer.
The blank check. There's no deadline on anything. It means that they've now opened up an account with a law firm outside of their other law firm that they can point at whatever they want at any time as like a loaded gun. So I have an issue with that. It doesn't seem to be protecting the interests of the taxpayer. In Apex 1, so remember, Regina Caffarella from Spencer, who did these current reports, she did Apex 1 and Apex 2. That was her name for them. And then there was the original report, which now I'm calling Apex 2018.
18, yes.
That was
you made that clear.
That was
earlier.
T&M.
So
So
it's 2018, and then there's 1 and 2.
So the engagement letter doesn't say what this is about. The invoices just say things at the top like Apex 1 or Apex 2, but not what it's about. The Apex 1 report has the section about what she was tasked to do blacked out. I can't imagine why. You can't tell us what you were asked to look at. That's different than like naming somebody who did something wrong. The other document, Apex 2, does actually say what she was tasked to do. It's in my article. Okay. So it says 3 things. The third one was to review the new system. They created a new protocol to clean up what had happened. This was last year. They got a new software company.
Is this 1 or 2, by the way? Which phase is this now?
I don't know what you mean.
You had 2018, then 1 and 2.
No. This is the report I just got the other day.
Okay, got it.
In the Apex 2 report, it says that one of the 3 things she was tasked to do was to look at the new program. So that's all blacked out. So I've written this up. It's going to be part of my appeal. I said, you've blacked out the section about what the new protocols are in light of what happened with Apex. You blacked it out. The problem with that is I already foiled for that separately months ago, and I was given the entire unredacted document about the new program with the new software company, which, by the way, is publicly available at the high school to any student, any teacher, and any parent who wants to put their kids into one of these programs. So it's a public record. And yet in this document I got, that section is completely blacked out. Now, the fact that there's that and other examples where even though I only have a limited amount of information, I think I can make a pretty compelling argument that this, and this shouldn't be redacted. I'm trying to get up to 6 different examples. That should be more than enough to make the point that this document was improperly redacted. And I want to then ask them to fix it, but I don't trust them at this point, nor I don't see any reason I should. So in this particular case, I propose the idea that I'm going to do something I've never done in 12 years. I'm going to attempt to raise money because it's expensive to start filing cases in New York State Supreme Court against the district for improperly redacting them. One of the things that I can push for is to have these documents reviewed by a judge in camera to make a determination as to whether or not they were properly redacted or not. My expectation, based on what I've seen so far and the past practices I have, I can make a pretty compelling case that they are over-redacting significantly.
Just a sense, at the very beginning of this interview, I got the feeling that this stuff was redacted beyond what is reasonable. But that's just as a common sense sensibility about it. So, but raising money, how much will that cost? It will help you push
Well,
that.
it's $200 to file, and then there's some legal work that needs to be done. The problem isn't the $200. The problem is currently I have, I'm going to read you the numbers because I wrote them up for somebody else just the other day. I have it right here in front of me. See if I can find it here. Yeah. So right now I have a dozen pending FOIL requests with the district. I've got 2 appeals to the head of agency, 4 fills of FOIL requests that are basically painted black. 18 by $200 every month or 2 gets really expensive real fast. It's thousands of dollars. I also have 2 pending with SED that I had there for months, 15 months, and I have another one with the U.S. Department of Education that's 6 years old. So if I'm going to go down this road, I need to do something like set up a GoFundMe page and let the public, if they want to, finance, because I can't afford to do all this. And it's not just doing the one, right? You have to have the credible threat that I'm going to do every single one from now on until they stop doing it. Okay, so I have to be prepared to go down that path, but I'm prepared. I'm willing to do it. I just don't want to do it, but I will.
There's a gut, again, I'm reacting as a pundit, and there's a gut feeling here that not only does this school district, but perhaps others, in fact, likely others, they want the means to be able to push people through the system to keep their numbers up. And they want to preserve that. That's the sense of whether it's Apex or any other way.
Every high school principal, every superintendent is going to be judged based on a number of factors, and then one of the biggest ones is going to be the graduation rate.
Yes.
Okay. The problem with what Brian Osborne did and other people have done before and what Dr. Fahey has already done here is they announced publicly that their goal was to increase the graduation rate. That's ridiculous because you have no control over the graduation rate. Students take courses, they show up, they don't show up, they study, they don't say. You don't control that. You can say that we are going to offer tutoring to every student who wants it, that we are going to provide certain mechanisms of support to any student that wants it. We can talk about that we're going to do an assessment of all students before they enter the high school to see if there's areas of deficiency to make sure that they are prepared to graduate. We're going. Those things you can do. Those can be goals. We're going to put more money into this because they can control the budget. We can have more teachers doing this. Those are things you can control. You cannot control the weather. You cannot control the graduation rate. So to make it a goal that every day is going to be like today, right, 65 and sunny, you can't do it. Tomorrow it's going to rain.
Can you set it as an objective?
No.
Hoping that.
No.
You know where I'm going with this.
You cannot.
But hoping that these tutorings and everything else and better discipline, that wouldn't increase the graduation rate.
Bob, you can't increase the graduation rate.
I've got to ask these questions for the benefit of the listeners. Tell me.
Okay. You can't increase the graduation rate because you say so. There's things you can do. Okay, I'll give you a related example that I think many people can relate to, including myself.
Well,
okay.
There you go.
People say, I want to lose weight. So I set a goal and I'm going to lose 20 pounds. You can't actually lose 20 pounds unless you want to chop your arm off. Okay. You can drink more water. You can get 8 hours of sleep. You can eat more fruit. You can walk 30 minutes a day. Okay. Those are things you can do.
Right.
The result of that, more likely than not, will be that you will lose weight.
Right.
But it's the habits, the activities that you do,
of course, that
lead to some outcome that you want. So if you sit around and say, I want to do things like lose weight or increase the graduation rate, you are going to be sadly disappointed because it's not as simple as just wanting it to be true.
Well, of course, but isn't that an issue with language as well? For example, I can say it is my objective to lose weight by doing A, B, C,
well, you
D.
can say objective or goal. It's the same thing.
Right. Well, no, to say I'm going to, that assumes that you can just make it happen.
Okay. You can say whatever you want. So if you want to say I have a goal or I have an objective or I have a aspiration or whatever it is to lose, it's all the same word, Bob. It's all saying I want to lose 20 pounds.
Right.
What's that get you? Is that going to do anything for you?
Not unless you do those other steps.
Okay, so then but you can't control graduation rate.
I thoroughly understand what you're saying, Bob. But you can't say I'm going to do this, and this with that goal. I think it's a fool's mission, but you can say it.
Well, I'm agreeing that you can say stupid stuff if you want to.
I do it every day.
Okay. Well, I don't mean you, but I mean generally anybody.
No, but I'm just,
I'm just going to say that anybody who said that they set out to say, I'm going to lose 20 pounds and then, popped some microwave popcorn and sat down and watched a TV, binge watched some show on Netflix, you're probably not going to lose that much weight. But if you tell me that you're going to change your breakfast so that you're not eating a Danish and a bacon, egg, cheese sandwich every morning, and instead you're going to have a bowl of oatmeal. You make that change. Okay. If you say that instead of driving to work, I'm going to walk to work if you can, or walk some distance.
Well, but isn't it the same as saying I want to put a man on the moon by 1969? You have to do this, and this to do it.
I wouldn't say that relates to the same thing at all.
Objective setting is this planning dynamic.
Well, Bob, the objective setting that we've had in this district has been things like we want to increase the graduation rate, we want to close the achievement gap, we want to reduce or eliminate bullying. And what do? They just make it up.
Well, that's the essence of this conversation.
And say we did it. So you don't do that. I want to hear how you plan to actually, what habits you're planning to change, what programs you're planning. Can I read Donald Rumsfeld?
Yeah, go ahead. No. We're not going to.
So as far as the redaction and as far as am I trying to get to the bottom of what it is they're not telling us, and I want people to consider, the 10% they gave me is terrible. So what's in the other 90%?
The unknown.
So I'm going to quote Donald Rumsfeld.
Yeah.
And this is at a press conference on WMDs back in 2002. Reports that say that something hasn't happened are always interesting to me because, as we know, there are known knowns.
Right.
There are things we know. We also know there are known unknowns. That is to say, we know there are things that we do not know, but there are also unknown unknowns. The ones we don't know, we don't know. And I'll cut off there, but I'll just say, so the blackened out part of it, we don't even know how bad it is. We don't even know what we don't know. So that's what I'm trying to find out.
Well, that's terrific. Bob, another terrific job. Thank you very much. Bob Cox, managing editor and publisher of Talk of the Sound, considered the source since 2008. You heard it here. You've been listening to Mornings with Bob Marrone. This is Radio Westchester, your radio station at the train station. We want to thank Vince Russo, George Latimer, Jake, Janelle Albritton from the Mount Vernon Post.com. I said Mount Vernon, didn't I? It's now the Westchester County Post.com. Bob Cox and, of course, Anthony Galetta stopped in to say hi today and talk a little bit about Mount Vernon. Tomorrow, of course, we have Mike Duffy will be with us. Also, A.J. Woodson and, oh yes, how could I forget? The man you all love to hate, Mike Edelman, and more. That's all coming up tomorrow. And we're going to ask the Professor of Mass Communications and Ethics from Iona, Jack Breslin, about the president suing the Times, CNN, and the Washington Post, just how far that is likely to go. And we're also going to put him on the spot about the left's intentions to stifle free speech by using their power to, which is what they constantly rail against, but using their power to keep his book, that is Woody Allen's book, from being published. That's all coming up tomorrow. Thank you for listening. This is Radio Westchester. We'll see you at 6:30 in the AM.